And welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for February 25, 2020. And we're not wearing lapel mics. How nice is that? By way of introduction, I'm John Hutchings, the chair of the board. And to my left is
Gary Edwards.
And we'll continue on.
Robin Courts, Robin Campbell,
Ramiro Chavez.
Please, Thomasina.
Thomasina Cooper, Amy Davis,
And on the bench.
Katie Johnson, Megan Porter.
So welcome. We're going to go through today's, after we do the homeless strategies update, we're going to go through the BoCC draft agenda for this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and then the March 3rd draft agenda, and then a host of other items. Yes, sir. County Manager.
Commissioner, could you give Megan Porter an opportunity to explain a little bit about the system itself? I think it will be good to see how the system is going to work and give the audience also heads up as to how this system is so good that perhaps it's going to start picking up some whispering within the audience. So go ahead.
Yes, I will do that, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
You're all right.
Good morning, Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. Just kind of a rundown of what occurred in this room last week. We weren't in here last week because the room was being updated. We do have a new larger I'm just gonna start in the back and move forward. We have a larger television in the back to go along with the new video conferencing camera. We tested this and it worked great, Skyping with our Public Works team, with Public Health. So instead of them having to commute here, we'll be able to teleconference with them if there is a briefing or something that they need to be part of. So that's a really great addition to the room. There's all new speakers, so the sound coming out of the speakers is going to be significantly cleaner and more crisp. You'll see the new hanging microphones. Those microphones pick up on the room. So if there are conversations happening, if there's side conversations, be prepared that your conversation may be picked up and broadcast through our YouTube. So just be cognizant of that. It will pick up even in the back part of the room. So try to keep side conversations to a minimum, if any, because you may be broadcasting what you're talking about outside of this room. These speakers only broadcast out of the room. They do not come back into the room. So those speakers are used for video conferencing, they're used for broadcast, and they work with our assisted listening device. They do not work inside the room. So at this point, we're not using lapels because it is broadcasting out. If there is an issue with people being able to hear in the audience, I have the lapels ready and we will put them on and then it'll come out of the back speaker. We do have a microphone set up for the staff because your back is to the audience. We would like you to continue to use the microphone so that they can hear you talking. We do have a new PC in here as well that manages the video conferencing, as well as if we want to display on the screens, staff can use it, bring up any presentations and it will display on the screens. It will also bring sound, so if we have a video to show or something, we can use the system. The Crestron system has also been completely revamped, simplifying it significantly. There's a single button that we push for this type of meeting instead of having to go through the whole different menus trying to find the right thing to make for the different meetings. There are simple buttons. I'll be doing a little training on it with people who use the room so that they'll know how to use the system. So one more thing I was gonna talk about, overflow. So the old television that was here is now down in room 152. So there's now 2 televisions down there, a larger one. The sound now goes down to 152. So if we have a large public hearing in here, a single button will bring everything, the audio and the visual, down to room 152 for overflow. It works great, the sound works great. These microphones also broadcast down to room 152 if we hit the overflow. So there's been vast improvements in the use of this room and 152.
And for the regular Board of County Commissioners, we'll still have to use lapel
Yes.
microphones.
Yes, for the regular Board of County Commissioner meetings, we'll do lapels up at the front and on the side, along with the handheld for the podium.
So my question is, I have a question, that is,
Yes.
the way the microphones are set up, if you're speaking and somebody sneezes, does it pick up the sneeze and cut you out, or does it keep the speaker who has the, how's that
No,
work?
so as long as there's a dominant voice, so it would focus on my voice. If you sneezed, people may be able to hear it, but it's not going to switch directly over to that
Doesn't
person to
cut you
sneeze. No, it doesn't cut me off. And if I'm talking and someone ruffles some papers or something, it's not gonna redirect itself to the ruffling of papers. It's gonna focus on me because I'm the dominant speaker.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
For the hearing impaired, how does that work if somebody's here in the audience now, and we're not broadcasting on anything, how does that work so they can hear?
So these microphones pick up our voices and it sends it to the assisted listening. We have assisted listening devices.
Okay.
So it does work in conjunction with that. So it will, if anybody needs an assisted listening device, we have that and it comes through the new microphones that we have. So it'll be actually a cleaner and crisper.
But it is gonna be important that they let us know that,
Yes.
okay.
Has that been
24
tested?
hours in
Yes.
advance.
That's been tested as well.
Yep, it's all been tested.
Do you have any questions? Perfect, thank you for that suggestion, it's a great idea. Thank you, Megan, for all the work that you've done over the last couple of years getting this done.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got intros, okay, we're gonna move into the homeless strategies. We have Katie Marino here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Keely Marino from Public Health and Social Services. I have a number of items to update you on today. One is just really quickly, the dumpster that we put at the jungle to help support with solid waste pickup. We ran into some snags. One, the original location made it really impossible for Public Works to back in and out to access the dumpster. So the initial place was placement of the dumpster was moved to the THC, which is a business right there, their back parking lot, just on their goodwill. However, due to the smell emanating from the dumpster, they asked for it to be removed. So we are working currently with City of Olympia's Public Works and City of Olympia's homeless response to try to find another solution to where that dumpster can go to help, because it was being highly utilized. So it's definitely needed, but we just need to find a place that works for it to be located. So
And there's a food truck in the front parking lot, isn't there?
not in the THC.
Not the THC?
No,
Okay.
not in that one. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're working it out. We're trying to maybe putting it on Pacific Way. We're not sure, but we're gonna try to get it back. So there's that. And then update, the Regional Housing Council met this last week on Thursday, and we were able to land on a vision and mission, which I do not have right here with me, but I can get to you. And then also spent the majority of the time talking about an interlocal agreement between Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County. So at this point, there was a really good, robust conversation about that ILA. And currently, all jurisdictions are working on their comments and their edits, and we'll be bringing it back to the Regional Housing Council in March when we meet.
Yes, sir.
Just to add what Keely mentioned, one of the key elements of the interlocal agreement is to consolidate into this regional housing council, the HHSC as well as the CIP effort. So, and that was, I believe, it was a pivotal decision at that point by the group. Obviously, each of the legislative authorities will have to approve that agreement when it comes to you, but that was the premise in which that discussion occurred. Also, during that conversation, there was really a good conversation in terms of the administrative support to the RHC. Because if the county were to take the lead, and because we manage the majority of the grants as well, there's gonna have a big impact on the staff. They will need to resolve that to make sure that we don't take an unburdened administrative work associated with the RHC. But at least from my point of view, Commissioner Hutchins can provide his own perspective. I think it was a very productive meeting. We went through in high-level detail the portions of the interlocal agreement. And as Keely mentioned, we're hoping to get to a point of agreeing the group itself at the next meeting on the terms of that agreement, and then it will be sent to each jurisdiction for the review and the legal perspective as well.
Yes, and there was great discussion on the, as you mentioned, within the ILA of combining HHSC and the RHC, because there's so much there's so much work each function does, or each group does. Will it be a capacity issue is a question we need to have answered. As well as the agreements for all the jurisdictions, who has a vote at the table, how's money gonna come in and such. So there's still a lot of work to be done yet, with a lot of the detail that needs to be hammered out. So it's compatible. Yes, sir.
Is the vision that the group would then meet twice a month, since each group is meeting every month?
I think that's to be determined. That's something that we're working out.
If I may, well, maybe there probably will be subgroups. They may be more often just to get the momentum going. But the group itself didn't get to that level of detail yet.
Yeah. Anything else? Commissioner?
No, sir.
Question on it? All right.
Next up, preliminary PIT data. So we have finished Faith Adicott, the consultant, and has finalized deduplication of the surveys that were gathered for the point in time count in 2020. We do not have numbers from Department of Commerce. There's been a little bit of confusion on that data pool. So I intended to bring a document that was ready today for you, but with the Department of Commerce, we're just waiting for some clarification. The Department of Commerce will release final numbers in May of 2020. But they have agreed that the county estimates are within a 3% margin of error. And these are the actual surveys that people completed. So there were 675 surveys completed. But that isn't all unsheltered individuals. So of the unsheltered individuals that were surveyed, there were 562. So 562 completed surveys by people who are defined as literally homeless. That's a 43% increase from 2019. Some of the remainder of the 675 persons surveyed are folks that are staying with friends and family, and the 6 people were actually surveyed in hospitals and in the jail. So, and we'll get bit more numbers on how many people were staying in jail that were transient as time goes on, but these were actually people who were surveyed, like filled out an actual survey. We did a lot of, I think the increase that we're seeing, it has to do with the increase in volunteerism of the number of citizens, 230 people volunteered that day to complete surveys. And then the increase of asking for the participation of folks with lived experience. So folks that were actually residents of the jungle or Percival Creek that came with us to complete surveys within the camp. So a significant increase in surveys being filled out by residents, people living outside. That was a significant increased effort this year over previous years. And then Lacey's participation, Lacey and Tumwater, increased their participation significantly. And so Lacey last year I think had 11 surveys, and this year it was quite higher than that. I don't have that number right in front of me, but so with that increased participation with our jurisdictions, as well as utilizing folks that are living in the encampments to help surveys being completed, I think that methodology has made a much more robust and a little bit more accurate accounting of what we had last year. So some of the demographics from those surveyed. So the demographics that we get are only from people who took surveys. So when we pull data from the Homeless Management Information System from Commerce, we're not getting that demographic information. We're only getting who stayed in shelter that night. That's basically it. So, but at this point, I know a point that is really important to the commission is where people identified their last permanent address being from. And this, for all of those surveyed, 59% identified being last permanent residence in Thurston County, which is consistent with last year's count. 14% of those who identified as being out of Thurston County were in our neighboring county, were identified neighboring counties as their last permanent address. So Pierce, Mason, and Lewis.
How many?
14%. 10% from other counties in Washington, 17% from out of state. So pretty consistent with last year's percentages, actually. But we found it interesting that a significant portion of people who identified their last permanent address being outside of Thurston County were our neighboring counties.
there more data?
Yes,
Oh, wait, I'll hold it.
there were the causes of homelessness this year, and then the barriers to housing are similar to last year, but what's new is last year, eviction and loss of home was number one, matched with job loss and unemployment. But the third highest identified reason for people falling into homelessness was family rejection, which was interesting because we didn't have a high percentage of surveyed young people. Actually, 18 to 24 was only about 18 to 24, there were only about 35 surveys of the 675 that were people between 18 to 24, and that the highest percentage was 25 to 48, that age range. So there were a lot of folks that identified through their surveys, notes on their surveys, that they were, because of domestic violence, because of more elderly people, just conflict with family, causing them to leave home for various reasons. So that was just a surprise to see family rejection be such a high identified cause of homelessness. Yes, I think those are the highlights.
Questions, comments?
On the address verification, what did you use do you have any proof positive, or was it all verbal, or?
Well, we
how did you do
asked where was, I think, I can't remember the wording on the form, I don't have it in front of me, but it was, where did you last receive mail, or what city or county did you last receive mail, or meaning a physical address that you are receiving mail being the place that you were last living in a home. And then if it said, if in Thurston County, for how long? So those were two of the data points. I haven't pulled out the how long have you lived in Thurston County data yet. So.
Did you receive an address? So like, did they tell you 1234 Smith Street, or?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. You don't have any? Okay, I have a couple questions. Since we're on this topic of the residency, there's nice to know and need to know.
Right.
That's nice to know.
Right.
Where the demographic, where they come from and such, but it's almost 60% are Thurston County residents within a certain time frame. That always begets more questions and more research and more data. And I'm not suggesting you do that, because that's just nice to know. I don't need to know that.
Right.
Because it says here, on the wall here, the Pledge of Allegiance, justice for all. I don't have an asterisk, except for. But I was intrigued by you said the hospitals, the 6 in hospitals, and I'm going to presume, so correct me, people that might be incarcerated go to the hospital for treatment. Are those the 6, or were you actually in the hospitals surveying?
There were, I would have to ask Faith about how those surveys were completed, because those were, a volunteer went in and did a survey with those folks physically. So I'm assuming there was a volunteer that was assigned to St. Pete's or to Capital Medical Center that were doing surveys that day. But it's certainly not a complete count of individuals that may be houseless, that were in jail or in the hospitals that night.
Okay, and it's intriguing. When I was getting my coffee this morning, someone said, I just have a question for you. Just right off the top. Well, what do you think about the drug and the homeless issue and the garbage and that type of stuff? And I was in a rush to get here, of course. And I said, well, I'm for holding people accountable, but we have to help people.
Right.
If that's the long and short of it, gotta go. It's an exceedingly complex issue.
Right.
And I get that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that's it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. Now we're going to review the BoCC draft agenda for this afternoon, 25th of February. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock and have the Pledge of Allegiance led by our very own Commissioner Edwards, and then approval of the agenda and the board meeting minutes from February 11. And then we have an opportunity for the public to address the board.
I don't have any intel behind any particular item. You may probably receive some comments related to the docketing process. And again, those will be recorded and will be put into the record. You may also receive perhaps public testimony related to the ballot measure on April 28th, 2020. That will be proposition number 1 for the Thurston County Courthouse Administrative Services Building.
Are you aware of any topic coming in?
No.
Are you? We might receive some public comment on the on-site septic as well for fees and equity regarding fees and who's paying fees and who isn't. That may come in, don't know. All right, county manager's update.
I don't have any follow-up, any comments from citizens from last meeting, but I do like to provide the board as well as the viewing audience an update, a brief update from the different departments. We just received their reports, so I will provide you with some highlights of that.
Okay. And then consent items, A through I. Or is that L? JKL.
That's a long consent item, that list.
It is.
So I believe you reviewed some of these items last week, so let me walk you through quickly.
Please.
Just to perhaps remind you of the conversation. The first item is for your consideration to reclassify a position from a legal assistant 1 to legal assistant 2 on the prosecutor attorney's office. And this goes in line to, they're looking overall how their business is being worked. And you will see another item in the March 3rd agenda that will complement some of the streamlining efforts the prosecuting attorney's office is going through this related to their staff. So this proposal is for you to consider reclassifying a legal assistant 1 to a legal assistant 2. It goes from $4,650 a month to $5,127 a month. That would be an increase of $477 or 10%. At this point, the prosecuting attorney's office is not asking for an additional budget allocation, and they're planning to absorb this within their means. Any questions?
So the request for allocation will come in the next budget?
They are not.
Not
Well,
this time.
Not this time, but when it comes to the 21, 22, depending how that person who's being reclassified, may not be the whole $477, right? Maybe zero, depending when they're placing that individual within the whole budget. Because the range, and that's a good question, of legal assistant 2 goes from $3,854 a month, that's the lower range, to $5,127 a month, the top range. But eventually that individual can get up to that.
Questions, comments?
So 2 is higher than 1. That's not true in some of our other departments, right? Where
2s are always higher than 1s
2s are always higher than 1.
in the pay scale.
Pay scale.
All right. I'm getting confused because I thought it was. Okay, never mind. I'll figure it out. I worked for the state of Alaska, and I know we're opposite, and now I'm getting. I thought that it was the opposite of 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this feels the opposite to me, but I guess I'm just it's all just jumbled together.
Okay,
The higher the number, the higher the pay.
but if you have any additional questions, let me know.
Okay, higher the number, the higher the pay.
Commissioner, any questions or comments on that?
No, sir. No, sir.
3B, reappointment to Public Facilities District Board.
Yes, I believe you discussed this reappointment last week, and for your consideration is to reappoint Nancy Clausen to the regional representative to the Capital Area Public Facilities District Board for the term of March 1st, 2020 to March 1st, 2024. I believe the discussion last week was in terms of this is a regional representative that each of the jurisdictions associated with this district needs to take an action on the appointment. I believe the last jurisdiction taking action on the appointment is Thurston County. The cities have already taken an action on this. The Regional Public Facilities District Board was formed to oversee the construction of the funding as well as the management of the Hands-on Children's Museum, as well as what we call the RAC in Lacey. And those are the two main projects that were part of this district.
Anything?
I guess I just asked one question. Does the district ever dissolve because they've accomplished their mission?
When all the funding, all the financial obligations of that taxation, because they obviously went through municipal bonds to build that, when those bonds are retired and finished, then I believe the obligation of this district will cease.
I think they're planning to expand though.
Perhaps, they do have the option to expand to something bigger, yeah.
Okay, 3C, abolish petty cash fund from CPED.
For your consideration, Commissioners, is to abolish the $100 petty cash fund the Washington State University Extension uses. At this point, as you have seen, the trend of some of those petty cash accounts, most of the transactions are done via credit card online, so there's not a need to have cash on this one. So we need to consider eliminating this one.
Anything on that?
No, sir.
3D, CPED also appointing new member to the Fair Board.
I believe you had also a discussion on this appointment to consider appointing Ms. Jen Gilligan as a Commissioner District 3 member with the Thurston County Fair Board for the terms of February 6, 2020 to February 6, 2022.
Questions, comments? Anything? Good, thank you. 3E, HR, Washington County's risk pool.
That's the risk pool. There's a couple of appointments for your consideration. Is to reappoint Carol Rimberg as an alternate director and Brian Anderson as an alternate director and safety officer to the Washington County's risk pool, which they will be representing Thurston County. And I believe Commissioner Edwards is the one who represents from the legislative delegation of the county.
Okay, anything? Anything good?
No.
Good. 3F, Human Resources Equalization Board reappointments.
This also for your considerations to reappoint Mr. Robert Hastings as a member and reappoint Mr. Lee Rudy as an alternate member to the Board of Equalization, and both terms will be from March 1st, 2020 to March 1st, 2023.
Anything? Oh. 3G, Public Health Social Services Resolution for position reclass.
This item is a little bit interesting. The request is for you to consider to increase a 0.8 full-time employee to a full-time employee, and that is an environmental health specialist 1. This action, you took an action last year related to the budget itself. So this request already fully funded on the current budget. However, the administrative aspect, meaning increasing the position, has not been taken. So this action provides that last step on the administrative option, and then they can go ahead and hire for a full-time environmental. So the budget was approved. However, we didn't have the chance to follow up with administrative steps, which is increasing the position to a full-time.
Is this a cleanup measure then?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner?
No.
Okay. 3H, PHSS, contract with CCS Southwest.
For your considerations, Commissioners, to enter into a contract with the Catholic Community Services for increased shelter, to continue shelter nights, stays for veterans residing at the Drexel House Emergency Shelter. And really, this is specifically related to veterans because this funding is provided by the Veterans Assistance Fund. As a matter of background, in 2019, 23 homeless veterans were given shelter at the Drexler House Emergency Shelter for a total of 964 bed nights. In 2020, if you consider approving this contract, request amounts of it again is $45 per night, and it's the same what we have paid in 2019. But however, this contract increases the available beds from 2 to 3 bed nights. So there's the same cost, but we increase capacity to provide shelter for those veterans who are in need. Mark Moffett, he is the program manager for the Veterans Assistance Fund is here. If you have any questions related to this item.
Any questions of Mark? Any questions
No.
of Mark? Just a comment, thank you, Mark.
I failed to mention this contract is for $49,275, and that comes from the Veterans Assistance Fund.
Got it. Good. 3I, PHSS, Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee appointment.
I believe you also have a discussion in here, and the fact that the program manager, Kerry Hannon from TST, provided a feedback to you a couple of weeks ago. And the board agreed to go ahead and with the appointment of Ms. Priscilla Terry and Stephen Thompson to the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee for the period of March 25th, 2020 to March 24th, 2023.
Okay.
Nope.
Good job. 3J, Emergency Services, appointing citizen at large positions.
Yeah, these appointments are to the Emergency Medical Services Council. Is for you to consider reappointing Ms. Margaret McPhee and Ms. Cindy Humbley to the Citizens at Large of the Emergency Medical Service Council. This appointment, if approved, will go from March 1st, 2020 to February 20th, 2022. That may not be a leap year.
Anything?
No.
Anything? Nope, good. 3K, a delegation of signature authority to the county manager.
Yeah, this is a new item. You didn't have the opportunity to review this last week. You took a similar action maybe 2 weeks ago where you delegated authority for me to just sign and submit the reports that are reported on a yearly basis to the County Road Administration Board. On the motion that you took, it was missing a couple of reports that are due on April 1st. This just complements the delegation of authority the county manager has been signing for years, submitting those reports. However, CRAB is requesting a formal action by the board for you to take and delegate that authority.
All right. And 3L, the voucher list. Have any polls or any questions on the vouchers? No? Okay. Now we're getting to the department items. Number 4 on the agenda is Superior Court Drug Court Treatment Services Contract.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioner, is for you to approve a contract with Pierce County Alliance with the drug treatment services, to provide drug treatment services for $426,709.50. And this contract will from December 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. As a matter of background, the DUI Drug Court Treatment Services contract with Pierce County Alliance expired November 30, 2019, and this will take effect as a backtrack to that date. The purpose of this contract is to continue substance use disorder treatment services for DUI and drug court programs. The contract will add additional funds and changes the renewal date of to coincide with other DUI drug courts contracts suspended from the fiscal year of June, United States fiscal year. The funding for this particular program comes from the Criminal Justice Treatment Account, also known as the CJTA, and that's an state grant the courts receive. Sabrina Craig is in the audience if you have any particular questions related to this program.
Any questions? You have any?
Yes. The dollar amount is a pass-through from the state, is that?
It's a grant.
That's right.
You
And
want to come up
You wanna come on?
and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Craig, and I'm the Thurston County DUI Drug Court Program Manager. Actually, the way that, it's kind of a complicated contract. The contract with the treatment provider, they contract with us, which gives them the ability to bill Medicaid services first, any third-party insurance, and then we use the criminal justice treatment account money to ensure that we fill the gap between what they're able to build down in direct services and their capacity of ensuring that we have a full complement of staff always on hand for the DUI drug court services.
Okay, and that money comes from
The criminal justice treatment account.
backfill
Right,
Money.
it comes from the state,
Yeah.
JTA
pass-through
money,
money.
yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
then my next question would be, because it does mention Pierce County Alliance, do we take care of our own individuals in court here locally? They don't have to travel to Tacoma or anything like
Oh, no,
that?
Our services happen here, sir.
Yes.
In our building about 2 blocks from here.
Okay, just
Good question.
pointing that out to the public.
Good question, yeah. Anything? All right, thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Sabrina,
Uh-oh.
if I may, is the end of, the contract is June 30, 2020, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the fiscal?
So the point of changing this contract, and it was really short, so a couple of things happened. We moved from using the BHO as the Medicaid provider to now a managed care model. That kind of speaks to that gap in time. We were trying to make sure that we understood all of the requirement, all of the language. We've been crafting that. There's been a lot of moving parts. So we also want to get it in line with that state contract for the criminal justice treatment account, which is why it's only for a short period of time. So this contract will end the same date that our current CJTA contract ends, and then we will redo contracts both for CJTA and for the treatment services at the same time.
So later in the year, the commissioners will see those items combined.
Yes, you can expect that you'll probably see me back here in July, or actually in June, probably early June, trying to get those 2 contracts back in order.
And that'll just be an alignment issue at that point.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5, Public Works right-of-way vacation request.
Yeah, the next 3 items, 5A, 5B, 5C, similar. I believe you had some conversations last week related to this vacation process. Staff submitted some documentation that I'm going to give this to you.
Very much from up there, give me questions, I'm sure.
Fantastic.
Something challenging. Oh, look at you brought the show and tell.
Pictures.
Perfect. Taser.
Brian assist. That's what the boards.
Hey, Romero, are you gonna frame it all, or we just jump right in?
Yeah, I'll turn it a little bit, and then you can probably ask the staff for additional questions. And again, the 3 requests as a vital vacation, you flip to this chart. That's a very nicely done chart. And there is a process in which what we call the unopened right-of-way. That is important to note. It's an open right-of-way where when the county owns that as property for public purpose and public use. The nuances of a vacation property, a vacation process is when the county has held those properties for public use, but that have not opened for the public use itself. And that is when an underlying property owner, meaning the nearby property owners, can request the county to vacate those areas so they can go back and increase their property per se. So it is a nuance in here. When the county opens right of public use, you just cannot vacate that. So there's a fundamental difference on the vacation process. The only properties that we can vacate to the adjacent property owners, those properties that have not been open for public use. Fundamental difference. So in this graph, to make it a little bit easier, is very straightforward. An individual comes and requests Public Works a request for vacation. That needs to be reviewed by the county engineer, the validity of that, and that needs to be held a public hearing. The public hearing is held by the hearing examiners, depending on the public testimony. The hearing examiners then refers that to the Board of County Commissioners to approve, consider or not. That's one of the steps, and then comes the petition to you. That's step number one. And then there is a financial transaction that needs to occur after you consider approving this process. And I believe that transaction comes back to you on another action and finalize the vacation process. I can stop there unless you want to fill the gaps in my overview of this chart, and then you can totally dive into the specifics of the vacation.
Okay, well, Craig Sisson, Real Estate Services Manager from Public Works. So we have 3 vacations here in front of you today. This is the review of the hearings examiner to whether approve or deny the request to move forward at this point in time. As Ramiro stated, that the financial transaction, the dollar amount to establish what the property is worth happens after the board approves the ability to move forward. If the gentlemen today decide to deny that request, any of these 3, then the process stops here through the flow chart. You'll see that we then notify the property owner that the process is done. If it's approved and we move forward, then there's an appraisal done. They establish the dollar amount on each of the 3 properties in question, and then we move forward from there. And then at a point in time, it'll come back as a resolution to you, and to approve and sign that resolution, they'll pay the established amount into the county, and then we will adopt the resolution at that point in time.
Okay.
So on the first property, and let me walk you through those attachments that you have. There is a nice outline of the different properties. The first one is related to the Bert Ball and Chad Stoker. In this page, first of all, they give you a perspective as to the size of the potential vacation. Also, this particular vacation was deeded to the county back on a plat that it was approved back in October 24, 1907. So it's been in the Thurston County custody for quite some time, I believe. And also the assessed value of this property at this point is, which is 0.47 acres, is $28,625.35.
208,000?
$28,625.35. That information is included in your packet that I just gave you.
That's the value of the county's right of way, or that's the value of the property underlying?
That's what we own as in custody, that's the county's right of way, because we have not opened, and if we were to vacate, the individuals who requested that vacation, they have to pay the assessed value, I believe. Is that correct?
So the assessed value is determined, that's through the assessor's office here at the county, and that's what the underlying fee value of the property is worth. We don't know what the actual value is, the fair market value, because there has not been an appraisal done. That comes in the next step after it's approved by the board to move forward. That cost is somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 to the taxpayer who is requesting. So we don't make them go through that step unless it's going to be approved. We don't want them to spend that money if it's going to be denied at that. So that's why the numbers provided in that packet, there's a caveat in there that said this is what the assessed value is. We don't know exactly what that number will be unless there's an appraisal done on that.
We don't own the property, right? We just own the right of way.
Right, and so through the appraisal process, they'll determine what the value is to have them then full control of that property back to absorb in an assemblage with their property.
And as a result, their property tax will increase because the size of the property will increase as well.
But I see on the flip side, to go the opposite way that my seatmate was talking, the applicant goes through 4 steps before there's an appraisal done. And once the appraisal is done, can they say never mind?
They can.
Okay.
There is an application fee that deals with some of the administrative costs that are deferred a little bit. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover all of our administrative costs, but it helps defer some of those costs.
Okay. Robin?
So I'm just trying to be sure I understand the $28,000. That's the value of the property or the value of the right of way?
That's the value of the underlying fee, the value of the right of way as land. Correct.
That is the value of the
That is the value of the right of way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And who is notified as you move forward with this? Adjoining property owners maybe are notified, nearby property owners that this is a pending issue and we'll be moving forward?
Correct. So we do a notice of public hearing out on the property, so the neighborhood knows about it. The applicants obviously will be notified when the public hearing is. For this particular one, Mr. Bergvall will probably be here today, and he'll request a comment later this afternoon. He'll want to speak. He's been very involved. So I anticipate that, but we do post the property at least 2 weeks prior to this public hearing.
That's not considered a land use issue? Okay,
No.
sure. Thank you.
And if I may, in this process, because you have seen some of the requests from the county treasurer in surplus tax property, which is a little bit different. So this is a vacation property, which is very prescriptive by law as to how we need to proceed, because it's considered right of way. And that is the nuance of this process. Right of way and the vacation of counties right of way, as long as the county has not opened for public use.
You have more on this Boston Harbor one?
Nope, I think I'm content.
So, do we have any understanding of why we have this right of way? I mean, it's an odd shape and it doesn't, I don't really understand why we would have a shape
So
that.
if you'll notice in your packet that these are all dedicated rights of way when it was platted, the Boston Harbor plat, and I believe.
1907.
1907, and those were dedicated to the county for future road purposes. We've never opened some of them. There are some that are open, Boston Harbor Road, et cetera, that comes down through. You can see some of the roads have been opened. The rest of them have not. There are alleyways through there. Those are all dedicated by plat.
Do we have other?
There are a number of unopened right-of-ways. This is not the first road vacation we've done out in Boston Harbor. Since I've been here for a little over 2 years. This, I think, is my third road vacation out in Boston Harbor.
And we have many properties like this have dedicated to the county for potential road use. But if you go back as to how the planning requirements were back in 1907 in this case, it was a little bit different requirements as to how the particular development can be platted more of a square shape. Now it's a little bit different. So in over time, we just ended up having those held in custody. And really it's not a use for the county, because in this case, we will never be able to punch a road through it. It just doesn't, the investment doesn't bring value to the transportation system in this case.
Okay.
I might just comment that one thing it does for the benefit of the county though, it places this property on the tax rolls. And then from now on, we will receive some income from it, where in the past 100 years we have not.
Correct.
All right, move on to the next one.
The next property is also was dedicated on a plat back on July 2nd, 1912. And this is 1.98 acres, and that is the request is by the Lakeside Industries.
And I apologize that it's gonna be tough to see on the big board,
So you have
but you do have it in your packet. Again, these are all dedicated, they were all dedicated rights of way within a plat. All surrounding ownership is Lakeside, so these are all interior rights of way within their larger ownership. And they've requested to vacate that will then have whole ownership of the property.
the assessed value of the proposed vacation property is $6,249.87.
Questions?
No.
Anything on that one? Nope, we're moving right along then. Thank you, Craig. Now to, TV lumber.
Yeah, last but not least, this is a 1.47 acres. and the request is from PB Lumber LLP. And again, this particular right-of-way was dedicated back in February 3rd, 1932.
So again, this is an internal ownership. The Hyatt Road does stretch within PB Lumber's ownership. PB Lumber has requested this vacation. The road is open right now. It's a gravel road. There have been a number of instances of dumping. There's people that go back in there, and there's been shootings, target practice, things of that nature back in there. There's been a number of cars that have been vacated, and they're asking that they be able to close it off at their property. They will build a turnaround that can accommodate emergency vehicles, but they do want to close the road off because the costs of cleanup have increased significantly over the past few years.
But the county does not maintain this piece of roadway, correct?
No, not at this point in time.
$1,400, okay. Questions on that one?
No, sir.
Anything? Done.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back and show and tell, picking it up from last week.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And again, I apologize for not being here last week. I
No
was in
worries.
training.
Not an issue, thank you, sir. Agenda item number 6, Public Health and Social Services, Healthcare Authority Contract.
Yeah, for your consideration is to approve our contract with the Washington State Health Care Authority with the Division of Behavioral Health and Rehabilitation Plan Services. And this is for the amount of $40,000. And the proposed contracts goes from December 15, 2019 to June 30th, 2021. The gist of this program is to work with partners, family, education, support services with Lewis Mason, Thurston area agencies, and on aging in Thurston County Youth Alive. Also includes partners with for children, youth, and family action teams in Thurston County, Thurston Tribes. Also involved is the Tumwater Hopes and the Young Community Schools. And Chris Hawkins is here to give you additional information related to this program. Do you have any questions?
And the pass-through money is?
This is a grant that we received from the state, I believe.
We did this last week.
Yeah, you reviewed this last week.
Welcome, Chris.
Good morning, Chris Hawkins, Program Manager with Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. So this is a new project to extend our ability to train people in the question, persuade, refer, suicide prevention approach. We've established partnerships with a couple of organizations that Ramiro just mentioned. Particularly in this case, we'll be training in the Yelm area, partnering with Yelm Community Schools, and then Area Agency on Aging, because those are two populations in our community that have a sort of a disparity as far as suicide goes. So young people and adults. And primary spending of the funds will be on the training, bringing the trainers to our community. So that would be providing 2 trainings in the first half of this grant, and then another training and follow-up support to those people who have trained, so do more presentations out in the community to prepare people with this QPR technique.
Which is really cool and trending, the QPR, and had a briefing on that last Thursday morning with Scott Hanauer with Youth Alive. And he talked exactly as you did in Yelm and with the Area Agency on Aging, those 2 demographics regarding QPR, question, persuade, and refer. Almost like CPR, but for suicidal folks. So that's way cool, especially what they're doing with the with kids in the schools and having them confront with respect their friends and doing QPR, because they're the first to know if one of their peers is like suicidal. This is really good stuff. Any questions?
No, sir.
No?
Chris, is this something that was available and you saw it and you say, this is something we should do, or is this something that you reach out to? How do we kind of get to be involved?
There are a couple of different evidence-based programs out there for suicide prevention. This was one that the state was listing as one that we could pursue and receive funding to actually implement here in our community. It was identified as something by the Tumwater Hopes Coalition. So we did a training already on this, not the trainer that we'll be doing with this next grant, but a training to prepare people for understanding QPR in Tumwater, and we liked it. And the Thurston Youth Alive Coalition has been very interested and supportive of increasing our capacity to do this kind of work with community partners.
I don't know if you know this, but I asked Scott last week that with the number of our kids in schools that are trained in QPR that are doing this work, it's very intimate and very personal, and it involves life and death, right? So my question was, these kids that I referred you QPR and you've moved on, how do I know what the follow-up is? Number one, the follow-up, and or who tends to the children or the kids or even adults if they do a QPR successfully, someone gets referred on, and the eventuality they do commit suicide, how do we follow up with those individuals? Because they're gonna do the self-blame. What could I have done? What didn't I do? What should I have done? Could I have done more? And he wasn't aware of that. So I can
Good question. I can bring that up with our staff to figure out what the follow-on steps are after training in QPR. I'm fairly sure that part of QPR is helping people understand that they're not to blame in whatever consequences happen after they've had that interaction with somebody who is in crisis. So I think it's built into the model, but I would have to get back to you.
I bet that is in there, that part of the training, imparting that it's not your fault. You can't blame yourself because you're not in control of that individual or their actions. I just want to know if there's any follow-up to that, because there's going to be aftermath. It could be glee because the person comes back to school for the rest of the school year. Wow, that's cool. But the other side of that, who tends to the kids or the adults that can't save someone? Just wondering. Anything else? No?
No, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Agenda item number 7, county manager on professional contract.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, Commissioner and Commissioners, and this is a follow-up to the planning session that you had at Public Health Social Services a couple of weeks ago, where you explore what will be Plan A and Plan B. Thank you. Related to the courthouse and administrative services building project, that again it will be in front of the voters April 28, 2020. When we walk through, what Plan A will be and what Plan B will be, Plan A is if the ballot measure is successful, and Plan B was if the ballot measure is not successful. I don't want to go through all the details, but one of the elements on the Plan A was how we can probably start moving forward to issue requests for qualifications to secure the services for a project construction management consultant firm. I just want to make sure that by you considering this action, we're not committing the county financially to any contracts. We're just trying to move ahead and secure those potential consultants. The RFQ is going to be very clear. That is not going to be a follow-up if the ballot measure fails on April 28th. It's just trying to move forward to position the county and gain some time within the process and the event. And again, the Plan A materializes. We'll receive some proposals if you decide to approve this item. Those proposals will be held until we know what happens after April 28, 2020.
Okay. Questions or comments? Commissioner?
Might this be utilized to move forward with a different plan if this is not approved by the voters?
It could be, and that's what we have here is the on-call services. So we can secure the services of this particular firm and put them on under contract, and we can assign tasks later depending on the expertise. So it provides us the visibility if the board chooses to do so.
So it could be for a Plan B.
Good, depending on how the Plan B materializes.
Right. Right. Do you have a further comment?
No, I just think it might be premature, but we'll see where it goes.
I'd rather get this taken care of ahead of time, but if my seatmates want to postpone that, well, I'll entertain that, we can discuss that. But I just want it to be clear, this is one of the biggest issues that this county is facing or has faced. And I'm not telling people vote yes or vote no, I'm just saying, please vote, engage, no matter what your stance is. But we still have to move forward because if it fails, we still have the issue that needs to be dealt with. And we got to have this Plan B. So that's where I am with this. I'm for keeping it on the agenda. Are you asking to be removed or no?
Yes, I believe it's premature. We haven't looked at simple things like fixing the parking out here that wouldn't cost much money and we could add a lot of parking stalls. So I'm not thrilled on moving forward with anything on this particular proposal at this point in time, that's all.
Is there a timeliness to this item?
There is not a sense of urgency on this, none whatsoever. And again, let me take you back to the conversation in the planning session as to what Plan A was going to do. And this is just trying to align some of the potential options the county may have and gain some time in the process if we were to secure the request for proposals. And again, if Plan A materializes by having approved ballot on April 28th, then we will have those proposals if we can start working directly with those consultants, as opposed to issue the request for proposals at that time. They will take us another 2 months after that. It's just a timing management issue more than anything else.
Not waiting until the last minute we get it on the hands. Any input?
It's not, I know we already went over this, but for the sake of this discussion, we're not expending any money whatsoever other than, so if it was a significant expenditure, then I would have hesitation. Since it's not, I have no hesitation. This is appropriate way to lay out the unfolding of this proposed project.
And whoever is in the position, a consultant who submits any proposals, they will know the conditions. Everything's predicated on the results of the April 28th, 2020 ballot measure. So, and again, I just gonna be very clear. If you decide to keep this item on the agenda and if you decide to approve this item, it does not commit the county to any financial contractual obligations.
But it does give sufficient time for any applicant to put their proposal
It's just
together.
time management.
Okay. Go ahead.
I guess my concern at this point in time is that this might create a perception that we're looking to go forward with something regardless of what the voters say. I know maybe that isn't your intent, but that same thing happened back in the early part of, I don't recall the year 2004, I think, or 5, in which the public was asked to vote on a jail issue. And the public voted it down soundly. The Board of County Commissioners then chose to move ahead with another plan. And then we all know what happened there. The jail sat there empty for about 6 years after we had about $100 million investment in it. So I'm a little bit shy of moving forward with this at this point in time.
So I appreciate my seatmate's concern, and looking back, it can be concerning perception-wise by the public. But I think it's a good business practice if we're not obligating the county to any funding or any contract. This is giving applicants lead time to submit a proposal. We have something in place, no matter what happens in April. We still have the issue, deal with the issue, but doesn't obligate us. I'm willing to keep it on the ballot, on the agenda, keep moving forward. You are?
Yep.
Okay. Stays. Thank you.
Democracy.
Point well taken.
Democracy at work.
Yeah. Point well taken though. Then we follow up on our week's activities and coming week activities, and then we adjourn. Now, we're gonna move into the, well, it's 10:04, let's keep going. This is gonna be the March 3rd, 2020 agenda that will come through, or get through. It's gonna be a lot quicker than the first one, the one we just did. We'll convene the meeting at 2 o'clock on March 3rd, pledge of allegiance led by Vice Chair Ty Menser. And approval of the Tuesday, March 3rd agenda, and then the meeting minutes from today. And the first one is a presentation, the state of Thurston, the Timberland Regional Library address. The state threw me out.
Yeah, Ms. Cheryl Haywood, she's the Executive Director of the Timberland Regional Library, comes twice a year and give the board presentation, the status of the Timberland Regional Library. As you probably have seen her presentation in the past, she's very energetic.
She's awesome.
She has a lot of passion for what she does, so I myself look forward to her presentation.
Anything on Cheryl?
No, sir.
Or TRL? Next one is a proclamation for Women's History Month.
Yeah, for your consideration is to proclaim March 2020 Women's History Month, particularly valiant women on the boat, off the boat in Thurston County. So we are going to be working, see if we have any representatives from the community to come and accept the proclamation. So at this point, I don't know who may be attending, but certainly we can reach out to some of the community members.
Okay, anything on that?
No, sir.
Good, and we have folks that have been invited that will be here for the presentation. Okay. Then an opportunity for the public to address the board. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I will follow up with any comments you might receive this afternoon.
Anything for the county manager's update? A bit premature? Okay. Consent items A and B. The first is 3A, prosecuting attorney establishing positions.
Yeah, following up to the item that you may be considering this afternoon related to the reclassification from a legal assistant 1 to legal assistant 2. This particular request is a little bit interesting. It requests the board to create 4 new positions on a temporary basis as an end date of June 30th, 2021. And the 4 positions are all legal assistant 1s. One is to provide 20 hours a week to focus on closing files. Legal assistant number 1, 20 hours a week, the referrals and cases. And the other 2 legal assistants will be a full-time. Their justification by the prosecuting attorney's office states that in addition to the backlog they have been receiving in terms of the cases, the legal assistants ones are the ones who are feeling the pressure. And also, as you've heard, the case management system will be implemented along with the Office of Public Defense. And that by itself, based on their justifications, they create yet another burden. How current staff needs to be part of that implementation of the case management system, which creates gaps within the process. So the proposal is to create, again, temporary positions with an end date of June 30, 2021 for legal assistance 1. The funding, as they propose, is from the general fund. And the general fund will be allocated based on the salary savings of the chief deputy prosecuting attorney. As you know, the chief deputy prosecuting attorney was left the county maybe 5 months ago. They have not filled that position, and I believe they're not planning to fill that position anytime soon because they're looking as to how that position will be better suited, whether it's the current classification in any other. So that by itself is creating a salary savings of not filling that position, which they're planning to backfill those 4 legal assistant ones for the time period. That's the justification that I received. Yeah.
Okay.
Are these new FTE positions that are going to be created? And what's the overall budget impact gonna be?
Yeah.
Next
The legal assistant one has a top range of $4,650, that will be a full-time legal assistant one. And for the part-time or half-time legal assistant ones will be a top scale of $2,335.
I don't know enough about this at this point in time, but I mean, is this kind of an end run for FTEs regardless
That's
if
my
we?
question.
Regardless if we know what kind of revenue we're gonna have to cover it?
There is no revenue to cover this.
It's salary savings.
Yeah, but the savings from the chief deputy, I don't know that's not gonna be enough.
We've
for
not
4 FTEs.
had an opportunity to review whether or not there's sufficient savings in the prosecutor's office to fund
Would that
this.
be premature on our part to move ahead with this until we hear from our financial people?
Yeah, this item is for your consideration next week.
Well, yes, but next week's pretty soon, in the scheme of things.
So, I don't know if Robin will have enough time to reach out to the prosecutor's office and then have those the answers to your questions for next Tuesday. But again, next Tuesday, based on the information you receive from Robin, you may decide to wait and delay this item. So you're not committing.
What's the hurry, I guess, I mean, granted, I bet there's a workload there that we need to look at, but
I
Are we under-
didn't have a sense of urgency based on the description that I reviewed on the item itself, so I won't be able to answer that question.
I would like to find out from my seatmates if you've been aware of this ahead of time, then any of this.
I had never heard of it till today. I'm okay with the approach as long as it's clear, first of all, the one good question is it gonna cover? But even if it does cover, my concern is, what I saw last year was that ending dates of jobs just kind of became extensions of jobs.
That's my question.
And so, as long as it's crystal clear that I commit to nothing for the June 30th, 2021, and the people that are hired are very clear that they have a job with an end date, because it's, I don't wanna feel like I'm firing someone when I'm not firing someone, just not extending a position, and there's salary savings to cover it, I'm perfectly fine to let the prosecutor use his resources and fill his needs.
But also the underline is also the prosecutor office is committed not to fill the chief DPA position until June 30th, 2021.
But does that balance out?
Well, that's probably what Robin needs
I
to
need to
look.
look,
But
this
it's-
is the first I've seen this request and I've not had an opportunity to look.
So that's really the underline,
So
is
I'll
not just
try to
about-
get a hold.
not just about the commitment of the positions, with an end date, but also the commitment, the prosecutors will not be able to fill the vacant position of the chief DPA.
As a practice, my recommendation to you is not to create new positions outside the budget cycle. But I understand the prosecutors need to do a certain amount of cleanup in implementation of a new case management system. So I'll look into this and try to have an answer for you by next Tuesday.
I also appreciate the prosecutor's needs, and he's done, or his staff have done, I'm sure, a thorough assessment of the needs and how to utilize the vacant position. Well, my question, I'm not looking for any research to be done, but folks with histrionic information with the county, I don't know how many FTEs, temporary FTEs have evolved into full-time. And so
Right.
you're talking about an end run and evolving into, that's my question, is how many times does that happen where, well, we'll just put in for a temp, and then boy, it becomes good. We don't want to lay people off, even though it's a contract issue. The perception is we're letting people go. And I'm sure the need is there, as there is a need in every department. But I just wonder how many times the FTEs evolve into full-time, the temps evolve into full-time or evolve.
Yeah, those are good questions, and you, as a board, can put some sideboards if you decide to approve those. And those will be the sideboards that you may feel comfortable in that. At least from my point of view, I do see the need because the implementation of the case management system is extremely complex. It requires a lot of staff to be part of that implementation of that system. So from my point of view, I do understand their need to address that.
So the other departments or entities within the county that touch that system, we can anticipate further FTEs
Well,
requests.
yeah, no, so the Office of Public Defense is the one who's also part of the implementation of the system. And I don't know if Patrick has gone through the level of detail and assessment, whether he will need additional temporary positions to implement the system.
This is for 4, not 5 or 6, and not 2 or 3, so we
Well,
don't know.
some of these are part-time, so I think it bears a little bit of investigation.
Okay.
I would also say that this request aside, in the long term, maybe something that I can work with Dennis Cesario on is when we are planning for major new systems, we should be thinking about implementation staff. So this possibly should have been addressed at the time we were considering total cost of the project. And I'll talk to Dennis about making sure, we had the same issue with the ERP where it was like an aha moment, we're gonna need backfill staff when we implement. So it's something that I'll talk to Dennis about, and he and I can work together on making sure that's factored in to these types of projects in the future.
So I'm just gonna recommend that we pull this and not bring it back until it's completely vetted and ready to go. But that's just a suggestion. Go ahead, Romero.
And I'll follow up to what Robin stated related to the ERP. You may recall the board did approve those temporary positions for the implementation of the ERP. So those temporary positions are approved for the ERP, but Robin is absolutely correct because it should have been done as a package. You know, like here we are. And again, from my point of view, I do understand the need because it was going to require a lot of staff hours to implement this new system. It's a very complex system, and that is something that we ought to do. If there is an opportunity as to how we could support that effort, I think is going to be a successful implementation. But that's just my opinion.
But I also need to reconcile hiring FTEs outside of the normal budget process.
Right.
Because we do it once. What about us? What about
Right.
us? What about us? This is unique too. So, what do my seatmates think?
Well, one of the things I'm a little concerned about is as we add to the computer end of things, I like to think that we're getting more efficient and could get by maybe with less than with more eventually. So that's what I'm concerned about taking a temporary and extending it into permanent, because I almost thought that we were gonna have the temporary to implement and then we were gonna be more efficient after that.
And that is absolutely the plan with the ERP. We need to bring some people in, get us over the hump of putting the new system in place and learning how to use it. Then those temporary FTEs go away and you've got a better system. And I'm assuming that it's the same here. At this point in time, the prosecutor is proposing the creation of temporary FTEs, and they are not talking about turning them into permanent at this point. But that'll be something that, again, as Romero said, you may want to put sideboards on, making it absolutely clear that the prosecutor, if the board should approve these positions, the prosecutor will hold the deputy, and that the positions absolutely will end on this date.
Yeah, I'm okay with sideboards. I just don't want to insult the prosecutor because he knows what he's doing. And when I think of temporary employee, I think, 6 months, seasonal, a year. This is a year and a half. So I don't see that as temporary.
Perhaps part of what we should bring to you is the implementation plan of the new system.
Yeah, that might be probably a good approach. And also,
Well, maybe hear from Dennis or Brian or something about what they think the implementation plan is how long it's gonna take.
yeah, and Robin is going to reach out to Dennis just to get some.
Focus on that?
You guys got it covered.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to hedge and leave it on for next week just to see if we can answer these questions, but I'm willing to pull it off if we don't have the answers we need.
Yeah, if you get the answers in a week, we can keep it. But if you think that's pushing it in 3 days,
I'll see
Wednesday,
what I
Thursday,
can do.
Friday, then we can put it off another week.
How about if you see this agenda item next week, it's because we've got the answers.
Yep.
But if you don't see it, it's because we're still working on those
Okay.
answers.
Thank you.
Will that work?
Yep, that works for me. Works for me. All right, thank you. I thought this would be quick to get through. 3B is the voucher list, we'll get to that. And department item number 4 on the agenda is request for sealed bids for the Chute River Trestle substructure.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioners, for you to authorize Public Works to request bids to replace some of the underlying structures of the bridge along the Yelm Tenino Trail that crosses the Chute River. The engineer's estimate at this point is $375,000, and the funding for that is out of the real estate excise tax to Region 2. And the process goes as soon as if you decide to approve going out to call for sealed bids, then the department will come back with a low bidder, and at that point, I recommend approval to award the contract to the low bidder. The staff is here to answer any questions if you have any.
I have some.
Yeah, okay. Come on up. Use the tall microphone. I like that.
It's much taller. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Marcus Storvik, Associate Civil Engineer with Public Works.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
What's the weight you're looking to be able to handle?
So right now it's open for pedestrian access, but
Okay.
not maintenance vehicles, emergency
Okay.
vehicles. So the rating, this repair job will bring up the rating for those type of county maintenance vehicles and emergency vehicles.
And when you say emergency vehicles, I mean, I guess you're assuming the bridge right next to it, that's on 507, would become disabled in some fashion or another?
My understanding would be that's not for that specific case, but as part of the bridge program, we do have to show that it's rated for that. So it's not for that specific case, but it's part of the bridge rating program that we have to adhere to, the standards that we have to provide.
I guess what I don't understand is, I don't know how far apart those bridges are, they're 100 feet apart or something like that. And we don't have to put anything into it to continue with pedestrian activity, or bicycle and such. But we're gonna put a bunch of money into it to allow for heavy vehicles, maintenance vehicles, emergency vehicles. And that is kind of what we're doing here with that resource?
Ryan Meyer's also my backup for
Okay,
today too.
we probably
If he has
need some more answers.
any additional comments.
So, hi, Brian Meyer, Senior Civil Engineer with Public Works. The current bridge does need this type of maintenance no matter what. It's pretty much about 30–40% of the timber, the steel, the piles, the cribbing under it are failing. There's a lot of rot and deterioration in this bridge. It was built, we estimate, around 1900. So the work has to be done. We are doing enough to bring it up to our maintenance and to get emergency vehicles across if they had to provide a service to a trail user. It's not meant to be a backup to Highway 507. That wasn't the intention. It's just that's what we aim for, is to provide emergency services to trail users if we have to. And in the maintenance vehicles, we do have an access point on either side, but the mowers and trail maintenance staff have to go back all the way back up the trail to turn around and then loop around and go and do the same thing on the other side. So it causes increases their maintenance costs and time to do maintenance on this stretch of the trail.
The state has a fund that sometimes they make available for this type of upgrades, I guess. Recreation, I can't come up with the acronym.
The RCO.
RCO?
Yeah, the RCO has has there been any attempt to put in for state grant possibly to upgrade this? I mean, we're putting a lot in. I know we're putting a lot of money into that new tunnel over by along Rainier Road. And I just wonder at some point the well might go dry, and it worries me that we put that much money in for pedestrian activity. But on the other hand, we can't have the thing falling in. I realize that. Is that an all wood structure?
It's around 200 and some feet long, plus or minus. There is a section that just goes over the Deschutes River that is steel. The remainder of it is all timber.
What's the age of that bridge?
Over 100 years.
It's over 100 years old.
30 to 40, the timbers are rotten?
Yes. But, so we're replacing, so the timbers, it was built for trains, and so there's about 5 piles for each pile bent, pile cap. We're bringing it up to, we only need about 3 of them for what we're trying to hold. So a lot of them we're just removing and getting rid of completely so they don't fall or cause any other hazard for us. But there are some pile bents that we're going to be replacing 2 or 3 completely, just to, because there's not much left in those piles.
Do you have any questions? Okay, Romero, were you gonna say something?
So this is an old program that began in 1990. It's the Rails to Trails. And that was a big national program. The local jurisdictions were given access to access the abandoned rail lines. And this is what was one of the offshoots of the main line, which obviously the county exercised that. And we were able to provide paved, the trail on top of the rail lines. But along with that comes with the obligation, we took all the old structures. And I can probably see your perspective, Commissioner Edwards, the level of investment, in this case, perhaps about $375,000. But they also have to be looking from the obligation that we have to maintain the infrastructure that we have in a safe condition. Because if we don't replace the elements of this bridge, at some point we'll have to close that even for pedestrian access. And at that point, replacing those elements will be more expensive. So, and I understand it is a balance we need to consider, but also we have perhaps, at least from my point of view, an obligation to maintain our infrastructure in a safe condition.
Maybe one other thing, I know we've got a lot of trestles like that throughout the county that we're going to be put in a situation to maintain at some point.
And that
I'm
is
just wondering about where we're gonna get enough money to make that happen. Do you know how many trestles right now that we have going over water bodies that were prior railroad trestles that now?
Yelm Tenino, I believe there's 4. Chehalis Western, there's 3, I think, current. One larger one at 14th Avenue, and then a couple small, just timber culvert bridges. But then the unopened gate Belmore, there's 13 or 14.
And that's that new one that we're just trying to open up.
But also, if I may, the conversation that I think it's a great conversation to have is looking on a larger context, all the bridges that we have in the county. And we have a bridge rating system, as Brian has stated, where we keep track of all the different bridges that we have, not just pedestrian, but also vehicle on the roads. And every year, the county engineer submits to the board a bridge report that gives you a perspective of all the different structures and the rating that each one of those have, and the priority in which those could be fixed in a way. And there's different criteria. I don't want to get too technical on how those bridges are rated, is whether it's a seismic retrofit or functionally obsolete. But the question remains, and this is not just for Thurston County, perhaps the state of Proclamation, how are we going to be able to fund replacing the existing infrastructure? And that is going to be a challenge not just for Thurston County
Okay,
in the future.
I guess where I'm really interested in going is at least let's put in for some type of grant recognized from RCO, for an example. I'm not saying there aren't other places as well, so that we're just not always coming back to the local purse that we may or may not have in the future. And I think we ought to start laying the groundwork for seeing if there isn't other money out there that we could utilize, because we have a very limited resource here, and we have a pretty good sized problem. So I just hate to spend our money without even having asked, because we're providing a service on this whole rails to trails that's for everyone in the state to utilize, and I think that we might be able to obtain revenue out of a fund from, say, RCO. I just use that as an example, but there might be others.
You're absolutely right, it might be others, and even if I may shift the conversation on the replacement of the fish barrier, that you put some seed money, real
Right.
estate excise tax too. The staff has gone through the process of securing grant money, so I believe the staff is constantly looking for opportunities as to how we can secure grants on this. I'm not saying they have not attempted on this, but it's sometimes the grants are not available for those specific purposes. My understanding of the RCO may be limited as to how we can use for this particular process.
Well, I mean, that might be true, but I'd like to know that we did put in for,
I can talk with our parks manager and see if they looked at that avenue for funding this. I'm not aware at this time.
well, they didn't put in for the tunnel that we put in. And that's what really bothers me. We went to our own source instead of going to a broader source, because the whole program that we're trying to put in place and make efficient is available to all of the residents of this state, not just Thurston County folks. So that's the idea of the rails to the trails. So I'd like to see that we're really looking for other resources before we commit our own.
And I agree, but I have a question for you, and that is on the rating, the Richter scale with variance from a brand new bridge to failing to failed. Where is this trestle? Not failed yet, it's still
No,
up.
certainly not. For because it's a pedestrian bridge, it's a little different how we look at it. It's pretty low on probably any of our bridges for the county. It would be one of our worst bridges in the county.
So it's high on the, we say it's low, that means it's,
It would be rated one of our worst bridges
okay,
in the county.
all right. Anything?
You said what, $375,000?
Yeah, that's the engineer's estimate, but wouldn't know until we actually get the bids.
And then we're paying for that.
Real estate excise tax 232. It
The
has
way that-
already been allocated in the budget for that.
So this is not, is this a component of what, I know we had this kind of right when I got in here, and we had this project, and then there was a reset of the dollar amount because it was gonna cost more. And
I believe so.
and is this a piece of that
Yes, and-
project budget? So we're really not dealing with a new budget item that we haven't already dealt with?
No, because the READ 2 program already has been approved by the budget, by the board. And this is not deviating from that approval process we already took an action on. So there is not a request for additional budget. So this, you're right, it was already discussed in a larger context as to how the READ 2 funding was distributed among all the different projects, yeah.
So at this point, it's a question of what kind of research went into this? Was there any grant money available? Would we apply or not?
That's a question that probably staff can come back next week. And then at that point, you will probably make a decision to keep it or not, and then we will have new items on it.
I guess I would like to just point out that on that particular location, there's access to the paved portion within a mile in either direction. And it might be an inconvenience going back and forth, but maybe we should do an internal policy to keep our heavier vehicles off of there until we come to a solution here. I just think we're not looking in all the right places for revenue to accomplish this.
That might be a different set of conversations, Commissioner.
Oh, we've looked at
Restricting vehicle access to trails. That's what,
Well, first of all, the everyday citizen isn't supposed to be up there driving their truck, on our parks, paved trails.
hopefully not, yeah.
And there's access within a mile either way to get on there for maintenance or for an emergency vehicle to respond. An emergency vehicle can get on and drive the mile to pick somebody up. I just don't see the need that we need to do that right now without exploring other options. That's where I'm at.
Okay, we'll get more information then for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we have that's the end of the department items, and at 3 p.m. on the 3rd, we have a public hearing regarding telecommunication franchise.
Yeah, yes, Commissioner, you will hear public testimony related to an application, a franchise application that we received from the Zayo Group LLC, which they have applied for a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate and maintain fiber optic telecommunication lines within the county's right of way. And again, this is the first step during the franchise process. And depending on the public testimony we might receive, then we will add an item for you to consider approving moving forward or not.
Okay, anything? No. On franchise, anything?
No, I'm okay.
Nope, that'll end that day, for that meeting. We're gonna take I know it's 10:36, it'll only take a couple of minutes to get these other two things going, then we'll take a break. Proclamations and awards. The first proclamation is for Women's History Month.
Yes.
You may want to come. Oh,
Yes.
no, you can be picked up.
You're fine there.
Amy is serving as the clerk in the interim basis because Juanita is out of vacation, she's taking some time off. So Amy is backfilling that process. So you will see her more often on that role. And in fact, she will be sitting this afternoon on the dais along with you, serving as the clerk.
Nervous?
I'm excited.
Oh, excited, good answer. So do you have anything to add on the Women's History Month? I've gone through the proclamation. Have you folks gone through it? My seatmates?
I have not thought.
Okay.
I looked at it really quickly, but we may have some edits.
Okay, and that's for next week.
But the
anyway.
concept's okay.
The concept's okay.
Yeah, that's for next week, so that's good. And then,
Can we see if we can get citizens?
I contacted Sandra Herndon, who's the president of the League of Women
yes,
Voters.
good, yeah.
And she will be here
Yes.
along
Okay.
with a few of her members to accept.
Perfect.
Very good, very good. And someone from the auditor's office?
Yes.
Okay. Perfecto. And so now we're moving on to advisory boards and commissions.
Yes, there has only been one additional application received since last week, and that is Elaine Taylor. Her application has been sent to the Historic Commission staff, and they will review and get back before next Tuesday what their plan is.
Okay, I see the other two, Ag Advisory, they're waiting to the next meeting.
Yes, for Thomas Watson, and for Fran, for the Veterans Advisory Board.
Okay. And that's it at this point. Questions, comments, Commissioner Messer?
No, I think we're good on track
Yeah,
there.
no? Wonderful. Did an A. So now we're gonna take a break. Oh, no, PIO check-in. You have nothing? You all kind of did it up front.
Yeah.
Can I,
Okay.
before you break,
Yeah.
I know I was a little bit late, did the county manager, or should I ask the chair's indulgence for the
Yeah.
county auditor?
I was gonna, in my legislative report, I was gonna ask that person. So the county auditor, you're tracking on elections bill. And there's a lot of conversation with WASAC, and she would like to address the board later on this morning.
This morning?
I told her at 11:30, I didn't want, I'm asking
That's
for
fine.
her to be heard for 5 minutes or so around 11:30, so she could just be in and out.
Okay,
but answer the questions that I'm sure we're gonna need answered on this item.
And I will give you the context of that conversation when we get to that specific bill on my report.
so she reached out to you to address the board?
No, had a conversation with her last night and I asked her if she would come and she was answering a lot of my questions. And so I was like, I want my seatmates to hear your answers. Would you be willing to come at a specified time? I proposed 11:30 because it's kind of right when we're in the middle of the, the commissioner items. She said that would be fine, so I'm asking if that'd be okay.
Well, I would absolutely do that, yes, I would entertain that, is that all right? Good, all right. Thank you, so let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back to the ledge update and the rest of the stuff. 10 minutes, 10:50, 10:50, we'll be back.
Okay, you're back on.
All right, welcome back. It is still February 25th, 2020, and we're continuing on with our work session. And we're moving into the legislative update. And I'm turning to the county manager, who's got all the notes.
Thank you, Commissioners. I will try to make this painless as much as possible. I'm gonna go through this, but I will not go through each of those bills.
Thank you.
I will just leave it up to you to go through. There's a lot of dead bills, as we have stated in here. But I do like to highlight a few that we're tracking on this. And the second on your list is the House Bill 1598, that's related to the annexations. That passed the House 77-20 overwhelmingly. However, the Senate bill has a little bit different approach, and so perhaps the House bill is not going to move forward, but the Senate bill has a public hearing tomorrow, which you will be testifying tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. And I have provided Kelly on the script of your testimony.
All right, thank you.
So that's something that is moving forward. That's related to the annexations. The next one is the House Bill 2231. That is concerning the bail jumping. Again, that passed the House and is currently in the Senate. And it will have an executive session February 27th. So moving on to the next option, the 2625, that's on page 2, the bottom of page 2. That's related to local parks funding, also passed the House. And it has in the Senate, it has a committee hearing at 3:30 on February 26th. Another bill to highlight, that's on page 3, that is Senate Bill 5457. And that is related to concerning the subcontractors by prime contractors, bidders, and public works contracts. The companion bill in the House 1571 is dead. However, the Senate bill passed, and right now is in the House to be heard, and we'll see where that goes. Next bill that I'd like to highlight is the House Bill 1590, which allows the local sales tax for affordable housing to be imposed on a councilmatic authority, that would be you. That passed the House. The companion bill, the Senate is dead. However, the House bill is moving into the Senate, and they have a committee hearing on February 27th. House Bill 2421, that is concerning the state reimbursement of election costs. Okay, and I'm gonna pause on that a little bit. And the Senate bill, Committee Bill 6134 is dead, so there's currently in the Senate, a committee hearing on the House bill that it passed on February 26th. So in your packet, I have included a couple of copies, and this is the gist of the conversation and the perspective the Mary Hall, the county auditor, will provide. Last week, the Washington State Association of Counties sent an email requesting to sign a letter that will be submitting to the some of the legislators. That letter is on the back side of this packet. So in so many different words, Washington, the WASAC is supportive of this bill, but it's not supportive of the language that is indented mid-page on that. So, I did talk to Eric Johnson, the Executive Director of WASAC, and I believe Commissioner Hutchins did as well. Fundamentally, what this language does from their perspective is created an unfunded mandate, meaning that now the state is going to give themselves an out in the future as to how unfunded mandates may not be funded. That is the gist of this letter. So when this came to me, I reached out to the county auditor, Mary Hall, and said, what do you feel? Because she's very strong supporting this bill. Senator Hunt is also supporting this bill. So that created a lot of conversation, not just among internally with Mary Hall, but also with WASA. To the point Eric Johnson sent a letter related to this bill, and this is on the front page of this packet, that he addressed to all the county auditors in the state. And outlines the position the WASAC has related to this particular language. WASAC is not opposed to the bill. And they plan to testify tomorrow in support of this bill and taking the language out. That is the gist of it. Also, WASAC is not gonna be sending this letter to the legislators before the hearing tomorrow. There might be an opportunity that perhaps the sponsor of the addendum that include this language may be pulling this language out, that perhaps is a moot point. So yesterday, I gave Mary Hall a heads up that I will bring this matter to your attention, just to make sure that you are tracking on this. And as Commissioner Menser stated, she would like to give you her perspective as to how she sees this particular sequence of events. And this is related to the elections bill.
I had a conversation last week with Mary Hall and with Eric Johnson and with you, Romero, and understanding what the issue is and the critical piece of this issue or this legislation. And over the weekend, I had a visit with Representative Andrew Barkis about this as well, and he wasn't key on that inserted indented piece about the proviso or the funding provision. So he requested I send an email to him, so I did that this morning. Sent him an email regarding this information, not the letter, but just the information. So I'm glad to hear you say that they're not gonna send this letter ahead of time, but they're testifying, WASAC's testifying on it tomorrow.
Is testifying tomorrow in terms of supporting of this bill, but not supporting this language.
Right.
And I think that's a good approach, and that was a good compromise, I believe, through the conversations with WASAC. As you know, I have engaged Deborah Manguia, our representative, and she's planning to sign Thurston County in support of this bill tomorrow as well.
And all 39 counties are in support of the bill, but they're also in support of the objection to that paragraph.
And that goes on the heels of WASAC filing suit in December to the state related to unfunded mandates. So I understand their position in terms of how they need to be aligned related to that particular litigation they just filed on behalf of all counties, and how this could be probably be jeopardizing that particular option. But I also understand, Mary Hall's perspective, because she has been working very diligently and very hard on this bill for a couple of years, and this is her concern, and I don't want to paraphrase what she's going to be mentioning this to you. She sees this as a potential bill kill, if that is the right word.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned that. With the filing of the lawsuit of the state by WASAC, then this was inserted, and the perception is to undercut and do a back-end run around that, and this might be inserted in other legislation that may come down from the state to the counties.
And that is the approach they has. So that's all I have. I just want to frame the issue, and when the county auditor come, then she will give her perspective as to how she sees the progression of this bill.
And Mary got to her destination safely, I trust.
Yes, I was with her.
I know.
Great.
Yeah, so this type of language is not new in legislation in the state of Washington. You'll see it sprinkled throughout the RSW. It's not quite as direct as this new phrasing. Generally what you see in law is that within appropriation, that services would be provided within appropriation given, and then the state does not give appropriation. There is that language also in this bill, but I understand why WASAC is concerned, and I also am concerned with this kind of language. The reason, and not to steal Mary's thunder, but what you'll hear her say is this language has no impact on election funding. And I would agree with her, because of the way we bill for election costs. But that the legislature would add this at all is,
trying to do
swiping
an
the
end run.
counties. Yes,
End
it's
run,
a
that's
swipe
what
of
they're
the
doing.
counties,
Well, they
so-
sent me an example of like just five that they found quickly offhand of this exact language in different budgets, Mary's assistant.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe we pick this fight in a different context where we're not having prospects of getting a lot of money back to the county
Right.
for our off-year elections.
I would agree, except for the fact that this is the basis of the lawsuit that WASAC filed. They chose election costs to be the thing that we filed against,
Not
and
public defense, not anything else. they
Nope.
could've-
Nope, this one.
it's election costs because it's very recent and very discreet and easily able to show that the state did not fund their obligation.
Increase of
So
non-boxes.
now they're saying, well, we didn't. So
I
that's,
also heard that it's anecdotal, but I also had heard over the weekend that there are numerous, excuse me, just as WASAC, all the counties are on board with this because they're concerned that there are now additional auditors throughout the state. I have no number that are concerned with that language being put in or being inserted as well.
that's a good question for Mary, where do the auditors stand?
If she knows. Yeah,
I'd be surprised if she
I agree. But she also mentioned to me that there were one or two counties that weren't supported this. And I haven't found any that were not in support of this.
There were, I believe her statement was they're not gonna be signatories of that draft letter that WhatsApp was sent to, but they were supportive of the bill.
Right, yeah.
The same position the county, Thurston County is.
So the letter's not gonna be sent until subsequent to the
No,
hearing
and
tomorrow. It might
I
be a
did
moot
talk,
point.
to her yesterday, and he assured me that letter was not gonna be sent prior to tomorrow. But it could be a moot point if this language is pulled out of the bill, and
And does Mary know that, Romero?
yeah, she's full aware of that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything, Kristen?
No.
Anything more on that? We'll wait for her arrival in about 25 minutes or so.
So
Or when she gets here.
I still have a couple.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. That's what I'm saying, we'll just move on from this one.
So I don't have any specific bills, but I'd like to give you an update. The Senate and House versions of the budget, both the operation and the capital, has been released. And there's a couple of items on the House, on the Senate portion of the capital budget, includes fully funded the Capitol Lake EIS, and that is on $2.5 million, but they put very interesting conditions to that. Let me read those conditions. A draft environmental impact statement with at least the three options, which are managed lake, hybrid lake, and an estuary, must be included on the EIS. One, this section must be submitted to the draft must be submitted to the fiscal committee by June 30th, 2021. It is the intent of the legislature that the final environmental impact statement EIS includes identification of a preferred alternative, and that is pivotal on their request. And you and I had a conversation about EISs. So this is if they fund this, what I take it is the legislature has perhaps had enough of nickel and diming this in a way, so they're fully funding and have those provisions. The House version of the budget, similar provisions, but there's included only 1.7 million out of the $2.1 million requested, a little less. They need to resolve that. One of the good news for the county, the operating budget for the Senate includes a proviso related to the court impact fees. And the provision reads as follows. It is the intent of the legislature that this policy shall be continued in subsequent fiscal biennial. That's a big win
Oh,
for the
that's
county
wonderful.
on the court impact fees.
You gotta get it into the house
On the
budget.
house side, I need to get a copy of that letter, but the chair of the House Appropriation Committee has sent a letter to all the members in support of the ongoing court impact fee. So both the Senate
Wow.
and the House show great interest. So let's just hope there becomes a permanent allocation to the county.
That's good news.
And that's all I had in terms of my legislative update. And I see Mary Hall is here to provide additional feedback on.
So welcome, Auditor. Come on up, please.
I have some handouts too, so. So, thank you. I'm sure you all know that I've been working on getting the state to pay their share of election costs since the day I was elected. It's been a long battle, but we're closer than we've ever been. And I understand that, you know, WASAC has some concerns about the language in the bill, but I want to assure you that the language in the bill as it relates to appropriations has always been there. And what that appropriation is talking about is the odd year funding, which they always pay. They reimburse us for odd years, but not election years. They have never not given that appropriation. And if they're short, they have never not approved a supplemental budget. So I have no concerns whatsoever about that appropriations being in that bill because it's nothing new. The other thing I think that's important to point out is the way the BAR's manual reads of how we bill. We bill for everything, down to paper clips, to paper, to indirect costs, to overhead, to a use fee. The only thing that we can't bill for is building a new building. It is that broad. So the state really will be incurring their costs. And if you look at this kind of infographic I gave you, and, you know, these are 2016 costs. We would have received over $700,000 for the 2016 presidential election. If they were to pay in 2020, I would expect that cost is going to be upwards to $800,000 to $1 million. So I have real concerns about WASAC's objection with the language in that bill because it really has no impact on how we will bill for election costs whatsoever. And the way I view that is that would be like me coming to you and saying, I don't like how you worded the paragraph in that ordinance. Will you please change it? How much would you, I mean, what would you think of that? And this is exactly what WASAC is doing. The legislature writes the laws. And, you know, I wish they hadn't picked the ballot drop box for their lawsuit. And I think this is kind of sending a message to them, to be honest. That is pure speculation on my part. But we didn't have to put in one additional drop box. But moving forward, the state will be paying counties for the cost of operating those drop boxes and having to pick up the ballots and everything else. So they will be absorbing those costs. So I think really that lawsuit hopefully should be null and void because, you know, we've just ordered new heavier boxes because ours have gotten hit by cars and they're not as sturdy as we wanted them to be. So we're going to be donating our old boxes to a lot of counties as well to help those that don't have the funds. But this is a huge windfall to every county, and it, you know, this spreadsheet kind of gives you an idea. We're talking over $12 million. And that's just looking at 2018. And I've spoken to Eric Johnson, encouraging him to not send that letter. You know, the last thing we need is for them to say, okay, you know, take it or leave it. You don't want it? Okay, we won't give it to you. And I don't think we will ever get back to this point. I mean, we changed it up. We gave them a little of what they, were looking for by putting in some voter outreach. And I know there was a comment made, I was watching you guys, that some of the other county auditors aren't happy about this bill, it's because they've never put out a voter's pamphlet, you know? So they're afraid of that, certain components of it. But we as an association are going to give them all our templates. We're going to make it as easy for them as possible. And if other jurisdictions can't afford to be in the voter's pamphlet, because it will cost them, there's an opt-out clause in statute if for financial, you know, if it's going to hurt them financially, they don't have to participate. So I really think that this is an amazing bill as written. And, you know, I hope you will look at Wasak's position like you would me coming to you saying, I don't like how this ordinance is written, please change it. Because that's the way I think the legislature is going to view that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if you're interested, this is the BARS manual that talks about how we bill. And we bill everything. That's why if you look
I
at
don't doubt that.
if you look at the 2017, revenue, statewide, let's see, Thurston's is, $108,000 for 2017. That's revenue in. So
So there is a hearing tomorrow.
there is a hearing tomorrow, and I will be there
I
testifying.
did talk to Eric, he's not gonna be sending that letter.
He's not going to be,
Prior to the hearing.
okay?
And they're planning to testify in support of the bill, but against the language.
Softly, I hope. You catch more bees with honey.
I couldn't
Big question.
attest.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, didn't you say that there seems to be something afoot to take that language out?
And you can speak to that, and perhaps that the
So
language may be,
I think it depends if you're on the House or the Senate. I think the language was put in on the Senate side. I think the House side would be fine if it came out because it really doesn't affect anything. But I think on the Senate side, they're making a statement. And that's why I think Wasak should stand down, because it really doesn't affect anything, but they are making a statement. And when I was elected, the Auditors Association had a terrible reputation. We were the association of no. And when I met with Ways and Means and people in leadership about this bill, I sat before somebody very high up on Appropriations Committee, met with him for half an hour. The first 15 minutes, all he did was complain about local government and what a pain in the ass we were. And then the last 15 minutes, we got to talk about the bill. And I heard that same thing on the Senate side. I looked back at what Wasak has accomplished in the last 5 or 6 years, and they haven't really had a lot of luck passing bills. And, I would encourage Wasak to take the approach that the auditors have taken in the last 4 to 5 years to, work with them more, and I think we would get more, because we truly are an extension of state government. We exist to provide state services at the local level, and, I just think a softer approach would benefit counties now and in the long run.
You have a comment too, I was gonna answer a question. I really applaud your passion, Mary, because this is your life and blood forever. But there are two sides to every issue.
Of course.
And perspectives to each organization on what they should or shouldn't do or haven't done. And I agree on one perspective, or one point, that inserting the language is sending a message. But I think what inserting that language does is the Senate sending a gesture to the counties on the heels of a lawsuit. And so that doesn't feel good as well. I'm very passionate about protecting counties as well. So I'm hoping this resolves itself in a very favorable way for everybody. I'm fairly confident it will. So I don't speak for the Senate, or for the House. Go ahead, Doug.
Mary, can you just spell out when you say the language is in there in the Senate side to make a statement, can you just kind of spell out for the uninitiated what statement they're making by putting this language? I mean, you've shown that this language has been, something like this, been stuck in budgets for years. And so what exactly do they think they're doing with this or saying?
I think the first thing is they write the laws, and the second thing is they write the laws.
But what does this give them that they wouldn't have without it?
I think they want the Dropbox lawsuit to go away.
Okay, so there's a subtext, this is operating on another level about something,
I'm speculating, but from talking to, for some hearsay, from people who have some pretty good relationships with leadership on Ways and Means, that's kind of what they're thinking.
I agree with your assessment.
and I mean, a reaction I have, and correct me if I'm off somehow, but a reaction I have is just that if this has come up, this exact language, and you showed me some examples yesterday, but if this exact language is popping up here and there, like, is this the right place to pick this fight, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Well, I would hope not to jeopardize the amount of money that we are looking at, and it's consistent money. And I really believe that once they fund even-year elections, for them to back out of that would be political suicide. So I think once we get this funding, it's going to be there forever, because it should be there. I mean, in the 50s, the school districts started paying. In the 60s, all the other jurisdictions started paying. In the 70s, the legislature agreed to pay for odd-year initiatives and referendums. It's been 50 years that they have not picked up the bill for their candidates on the ballot, and I think it's time, and I think this is the perfect year to get this done. We've never been this close. It passed the House. We just need to get the Senate to pass it out, and I'm confident that they will if we don't tick them off.
We've had conversation after conversation after conversation about, the lack of revenue and lack of state helping us with certain very obvious things that they should be, and so I just, if you've had the conversation with legislators, I haven't. If you're telling me that signing this letter could jeopardize this accomplishment of this, then I don't want to do it, so that's where I'm at.
Well, thank you, and I would hope that would be the county's position. This bill does a lot of good things, and we totally rewrote it this year because insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So, we changed up the bill. We've got some really good things in there that was acceptable to both sides, both houses, and both sides of the aisle. So.
And that is the current position that we have given to WASAC. They were not signatories of that letter, and they were supporting the bill. So if there's any changes on that position, that's the reason why I need to bring this to your attention. That's the current position, as you stated, Commissioner.
What does your auditors association feel? Are they they're on the same lane with you?
They are very supportive of this bill. We've had a lot of discussion.
But I
There's been a
mean,
lot of,
leave everything alone and go ahead with it. Don't use this to rock the boat.
you're never going to get 100%, but I would say 90%, absolutely.
One other thing, who's paying for this upcoming presidential primary? Who
The
pays
state
that?
is.
The state pays that as well. Okay,
David.
thank you.
It seems to me that, and you may have the answer to this, because I don't, and it might be just speculative, but WASAC has for several years asked for this reimbursement, or other mandates asked for reimbursement or to be funded. And the consistent answer has been, well, perhaps next time. And we ask again, well, perhaps next time. And so this next time ended up with, I guess a couple of years ago, if you don't, WASAC will file a suit. WASAC does file the suit, and then this is inserted by the Senate. And so my question is, and I don't know if you know this, if the bill dies, does that give credence then to the lawsuit of an unfunded mandate? I don't know. Or, because hopefully it's gonna survive, this will be taken out and it'll survive. But I don't know legally, do you know that stuff? Would that add credibility if the bill died for whatever reason? Does that add credibility to the lawsuit?
It shouldn't have anything to do with it. I mean,
And it depends who you talk to. There are attorneys out there that don't think the Dropbox lawsuit is going to get anywhere anyway. So,
Okay.
and it didn't cost us a cent, so.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I guess we'll have to see how the hearing goes tomorrow. And then depending on that, we may have to engage you again on this matter.
And just a final point, we've never gotten these bills even out of rules. So,
It is very exciting that this bill,
It's
this
what?
elections bill is making it this far. It's very exciting and I absolutely agree that we need the money. And that this clause in this particular bill would not have an effect. But if we're seeing this language show up in multiple places, that is evidence that the legislature is not going to take care of counties. And that is a very concerning thing.
so my wish would be if this shows up in another bill, get all excited about that language in that bill
Of course,
and not
that
this
first
bill.
thing comes up.
So I need to run, I've got to be
All
on
right,
the
thank you,
phone.
Mary. Thank you very much for
You're
coming.
welcome,
Appreciate your time, man.
of course.
And county manager report. Is that it, or do you have more?
I'm done with
That was it, okay.
Thank you.
Briefings, public hearings, ordinance.
Yeah, this is the briefing related to the complete street ordinance. You had a briefing on W12. I believe Commissioner Fairweather was absent. Here's the revised documentation where staff highlights some of the changes on the track mode. And whether we feel comfortable to provide direction to staff to take the next steps, which they need to bring an AIS and go through the process of approval. So you're not approving this ordinance, you just provide direction to bring an actual formal AIS, where you take a formal action and approve those proposed changes. And Teresa is here to answer any questions.
I didn't have any questions. I know, Mario, you had questions, so I'd like to hear if your questions are answered.
I believe that on the ordinance and the proposed change, as stated on yellow, I think it addresses my concerns that I had about it.
It does, okay. And a lot of it. Okay. So where are we at with this then?
So if the board feels okay, we'll ask to provide direction for staff to bring an AIS for you to take a formal action on this proposal at a later date.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
So, like looking at the ordinance, it says the. What do I have? Right in the middle, it says the TIV's Complete Streets Award, it's kind of what we're angling for, right? Is only available to jurisdictions that have adopted a Complete Streets ordinance. And it, so, like, what are the sideboards? I mean, obviously, it's gotta have certain baseline parameters or they wouldn't consider it a Complete Streets ordinance, but it sounds like we have some flexibility to mold it, or is it just a template that, hey, you gotta adopt this template in order to have a Complete Streets ordinance?
So this was put together by TRPC for us, and they reached out to TIB and reached out to other jurisdictions that have done this and kind of compiled, and so it meets the standard for what they need. And they have said it meets that.
But it's conceivable you'd come up with something, if you really tried to change it a lot, they might go, no, this isn't a Complete Streets or, I guess my question is, what's the definition of a, but we're good, we're basically following the templates and the parameters that we've been given.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this your first time seeing this? Okay. So I have the information I need, but what would you like, sir?
Oh,
More time to digest it?
I don't know as I need more time to digest.
Okay. Ready to go?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
So an AIS will come to your attention later date.
Beautiful, thank you.
I do have one question
Uh-huh.
on the optimal time frame for the decision. It says decision needed. What's the time frame that is needed?
You just provided that decision.
So that's gonna be it coming up.
You just did.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
good enough.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner items, the Mazama Pocket Gopher, conservation easements. Jennifer Walker.
Jennifer Davis.
Davis.
I was gonna say,
The microphone's picked it up. Ms. Davis, thank you for joining us today.
Allow me to frame it, commissioners. This is a follow-up, maybe a couple of weeks ago, you had a conversation related to accepting easements from a private citizen. In this case was Mr. Tibetan. At that point is where we give you a briefing, that perhaps we also receive requests from other organizations, in this case PSE. They also are in need of the county taking responsibility of those easements related to the Masama Pocket Gopher impacts. So staff has gone through the process and determined what will be the financial impact to that, and Jennifer is here to walk you through this document that is included in your packet.
So Jennifer Davis, Community Planning Division Manager in CPED. And staff has done the follow-up work to determine, I know you're interested in learning about costs of what it would take to sort of put this an easement and an agreement in place with Puget Sound Energy. And it's basically to have us be the holders and the monitors of an easement on their properties that they're seeking approval with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to have properties to mitigate their own impacts out in Thurston County. And we worked internally with our prosecuting attorney's office and Chris Chapeau, our conservation services division lead. And we come up with a pretty straightforward process that just simply would involve PSE submitting a type of application to us for us to be able to intake and review this easement, and using our existing easement template as we've used for other single-family property owners like Mr. Tibetan, to create an easement that's going to cover what we need to cover with PSE, and it's full cost recovery on our end. So we build into the easement the agreement that we would be charging for ongoing monitoring of the properties that would be covered by the easement. And I believe these are smaller properties scattered throughout the county. Last time I checked, there were 13. It would be one easement to cover all. And then annually, our staff would do the job of doing some monitoring, making sure there aren't encroachments into these properties, and doing an annual report. And all of that would be charged back to PSE at an established rate. And that's all spelled out in the memo. So again, it's something we have the capacity to do. We're happy to provide this service to PSE. At the end of the day, it's similar to what we're seeking to do through our HCP. And we don't have any incurred costs. It would all be covered through the initial application and the follow-up invoicing back to PSE.
Do you have a question? Do you have a question? I have a question.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Gary.
You mentioned there's 13 properties around the county that are affected?
I can't confirm right now, but the last I heard from PSE, and this would be all part of the application that they detail when they first apply to us, and then we create the easement. There were 13 mitigation sites that they have secured that they are seeking an easement to cover. And those 13 sites would be what the easement would cover and what we'd be monitoring through time.
That's just for PSE? They
Yes.
have 13 sites.
That's my understanding at this point.
How many other sites do we have that other citizens might be interested in? Is that gonna be in the equation at all?
No, I mean, this is a process that we have built and it can apply to any applicant. And it has applied to previous applicants, like Mr. Tibetan and I believe Show was one of the other applicants. So we have the ability to basically provide this service.
Well, I guess my concern is if we set something here now for PSE, is that the same rate schedule gonna apply to these other folks as well?
Yeah, we would apply a consistent rate schedule and charges. These are based on costs for our folks to do this type of work, and that would be the same for all applicants.
Okay, then like Mr. Tibetan has something that he's gonna have you review apparently. Is that cost and everything gonna be the same for him as it is for PSE?
So every easement is negotiated separately. Do you want to speak to that, Chris? Come on up. Chris is the one who actually knows all the good stuff, but every easement is negotiated separately with an individual applicant, and the easement language spells out what the duties would be for Thurston County and the costs associated. And as far as the costs for the other easements, do you want to speak to that?
Okay, so the costs for each of the applicants are based on the fee schedule that's currently approved. It's using the per hour costs that it costs for a staff member to review and move the application through its process. The cost to PSE will probably be more expensive because there's more to look at. The time in which it takes for the staff member to do the work, especially when it comes to monitoring, will be longer versus going out and looking at 1 acre for, say, Mr. Deveton or Mr. McLean, where we already have easements on their individual properties.
Okay, I guess my concern is that we set a precedence that might reflect back to other property owners, and I don't want them to get charged excessively. I know, like, I'll use Mr. Tibetan's example. Both of his properties are adjacent to each other, and they're actually connected properties that are gonna be the setback, if you will. So, I mean, if one visit's gonna give you both.
Right, so
And
that would be reflected.
You would consider that in your billing process, I guess, versus maybe having to run around to 13 different sites all around the county.
Correct, that would be reflected in staff time.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, following up to that question, but on this little chart, it says 8 to 12 hours annually, and you're saying that's across the board, so
That's for the PS.
oh, this
Specific.
this little chart is PSC's chart.
Correct.
You're not saying that every property owner will require a minimum of 8 hours?
No.
Okay, but they will be billed at $199 per hour for however many hours it takes.
Correct.
And I thought that, when we talked about Mr. Tibetan, I thought that it was gonna be a temporary bridge, and then once the HCP is folded in, then basically we wouldn't be doing this in perpetuity, we'd be doing it until they could fold into a bank of mitigation or whatever, and we'd be out.
So that is exactly the plan, and so our easement template includes language that allows individual easements that we hold to be rolled in to our HCP in the future, once we have our ITP and our permits in place. And there would be a fee involved in rolling that in, obviously, equivalent to sort of the mitigation fees that we'll be charging others. But then that's the idea. They would be able to exchange their kind of 1 acre and buy credits into our program, and then their existing easement could be extinguished and they would regain use of that property. So that's the plan.
Okay.
If this, the agreement would be in perpetuity until we have a plan in place, correct?
That's correct. The easement actually would spell out the process or talk about the process that we would need to go through to be able to extinguish it in exchange for participating in our HCP in the future.
Okay. And so my question is, goes to increase in costs. If it's gonna be a year, 2 years, hope it's not 3 years before we get an HCP, our costs increase. These costs do not change.
Well, they're subject to a fee schedule, so if
They
we
are.
if we update our fee schedule and our hourly charge rates, then they would
Okay, so we're not locked into that for that individual or whatever group, organization, homeowner, whatever, forever.
No, I believe the easement language would not lock in a certain rate. It would refer to whatever the current fee schedule is for
Okay.
that work.
Thank you. Any more? Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe for interested citizens that are watching this process develop, could you explain the reason for the $199 an hour? I mean, it's the overhead of the building and the vehicle and benefits. I mean, a lot of things go into it, right?
Yes, and I am not the expert. Do you have any insight into how those fees are developed?
No, I do not.
But it is true. It is not just their salary. It includes benefits, cost of equipment, all of the things that go into supporting an FTE, basically.
It's a loaded rate.
It's the building depreciation, it's everything,
It's
right?
All loaded.
Okay, it's fully loaded.
Benefits, hourly rate, whatever we spend on indirect costs and everything else, it's a loaded rate.
That's the only way we can do this and have full cost recovery for ourselves and not actually cost ourselves money by providing this service.
Good. Anything else? Anything else?
No?
So unless you have any concerns, staff is gonna move forward with this plan as stated to you and start engaging POC.
Yes.
Start getting into this
Well, I
process.
have
But these are, okay, these are the only properties at this point. Is PSC gonna come back with additional ones? Say, oh, here's another 17, another 30?
So based on conversations with PSC, the permit that they're obtaining from U.S. Fish and Wildlife at the moment should cover them in the next 5 years for their 5-year plan.
Okay.
At that point, they would then be able to actually purchase mitigation and receive permits through the county and county mitigation through our HC.
Okay.
It's kind of a stopgap.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
And where are we at on those other areas that are not PSC that we're gonna be monitoring? I mean, like Mr. Tibetan is waiting for a permit, I guess, to do something, but first we need to reach an agreement with him. What's happening there?
So, Mr. Tibetan, Jan has 2 properties. One, his son purchased and has built on and received his permits. So Todd Tibetan's property, his conservation easement is complete. The conservation easement and permitting process for his daughter, as we understand it, is going through our permitting process in parallel process with U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
But he's not being held up on this anymore?
Held up.
Held up on his project?
Well, I can't speak. He's in negotiations with U.S. Fish and Wildlife right now. I know that because I just spoke with him the other day. So it takes a long time to get through that process. I don't believe that there's anything we're doing that's holding him up at this point.
Okay.
In fact, the critical point was the county accepting the easement, and that decision was made by you. So the rest is just going through the process.
The critical point was U.S. Fish and Wildlife being willing to start working with him. And then the next critical point was us holding the easement.
In which you did provide that version. Now it's just go through the process to get to the finish line.
And tomorrow afternoon, I have a meeting with Brad Thompson
Okay.
in my office. So we'll hopefully
What are you
learn
guys
more.
trying to do?
Don't know, he's called for the meeting.
Okay.
So I know what I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
If I may, so this is why it's so important for the board to consider requests for easements on a case-by-case basis.
Good point.
Sorry.
Chris Chappelle, Jennifer Davis, thank you very kindly.
Thank you very much.
Good job, thank you.
Thanks.
Code violation properties update.
Yeah, this is a follow-up, I believe, from last week with 2 properties, the LP Brown and the single street estates. Attached to your packet is an update on all the 2 of them. The LP Brown was referred to the First Circuit Attorney December 17, 2018. And I believe the First Circuit Attorney is expected to file a summary judgment by the end of winter, beginning of spring. That's the latest that we have. Related to the single tree estates, the same, it was referred to the prosecuting attorney's office back in August 2019. A summary judgment was filed on February 7, 2020, and the hearing related to this summary judgment is scheduled for March 13, 2020. That, I believe that is the information you requested last week. Obviously, that was not here, but if you are in need of any additional information, Brett is here to answer any questions.
Hello, Brett.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Brett Burris, Building and Planning Manager with Community Planning and Economic Development. County Manager has provided the update that I have as it relates to the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I would like to add, if I may, when I first came here and I was about 2 months into the position, we had a nice code compliance briefing for you guys, and we highlighted 3 properties. LP Brown was one of them, Single Tree Estates was the other one, and finally it was called Crest Ridge Lane. Just an update on Crest Ridge Lane. Since we started that process or continued to move forward with that process, that house has been demolished. And so of the 3 properties that we highlighted for you, all 3 of them are either completed or in process to be completed.
Any questions of Brett?
No, good, thank you.
You want to do one at a time? Or you have questions on any of them? Do you have questions on, okay.
I have questions on LP Brown. So do you know what this summary judgment, like what's gonna happen if we're successful? What do we get out of it? We get condemn the property? Is that what we're trying to do and take control of it, or what is exactly the end goal?
The end goal is to get a judgment, a court-ordered judgment to require the homeowner to abate the issue, and it could be a demolition, it could be clean the property up, make it safe. With that court-ordered judgment, we now have claimed interest on the property to where if we go back to the courts stating that work was not completed, we can file liens against the property. In addition to that, we can also get to a point where maybe the county does the work and we bill them through the lien process to receive money once the property is sold.
And is there any, does the fires that were suspected to be drug related, can we file supplemental evidence in support of our motion for summary judgment based on this? If what we're trying to prove is the danger and the hazard and the need for abatement, it seems like that would be relevant.
Typically, if the fire affected the path that we are on, and at this time he doesn't feel that it has. So a summary judgment can be filed regardless if it has burned down or not. It's my understanding from Mr. Burns that we still proceed and it's still a danger and or a nuisance.
The community wanted to, some folks wanted to make sure it was fenced, and then I heard it was fenced, and then we've checked in that it was the fire department that fenced it. Is that what's happened and where we're at with that?
That is my understanding, that the fire department has fenced off the LP Brown site.
Do you know if they intend to keep it fenced for indefinitely, or how does that work?
I don't have an answer to that at this time, unfortunately.
Okay, and would it be, I have a bunch of emails in my inbox, so can I summarize what you just said and sort of let the community know that we're proceeding, we have a court summary judgment motion on file, and just to kind of, does that make sense from your perspective?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Maybe we should coordinate a response. I don't know if the other commissioners have citizens that, it's in my district, I guess, so maybe I'm getting all the inquiries. Yeah.
I have not.
Okay.
No, I'm getting it on the other.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to respond for the
Okay. Come on, son.
Last Friday, I'm sorry.
Yeah, good.
Last Friday, I did a site visit out in Southeast regarding on-site septic issues that folks are concerned with. Regarding the fees that they're paying. When it's seemingly around the corner, there is another code compliance issue regarding, looks like it might be a half acre or an acre, probably an acre or so. I'll probably just chat with you offline. I took pictures of the area, of the site, and I'll share that with you later then. But there's gonna be another one that'll be cropping up. Haven't received email on it, may receive testimony on that if we get more information, or more testimony at the, at a public testimony this afternoon for the Board of County Commissioners, if these gentlemen show up, or neighbors show up. But it will be part and parcel of the conversation on the 26th when we talk about on-site subjects then. So I'll talk with you before then.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. Commissioner?
No, good.
All right. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you for your time.
Next, Nisqually flood.
There is, let me give you an updated report. And we're not gonna go through in details because it's something you already heard in terms of response to the flooding. So there's a couple of areas that I'd like to discuss with you related to this report. Kurt Harding is going to concentrate on page 4 of this report, and this is something new for you. Following that conversation and that update, I will refer back to your packet of information, which is an email from the Nisqually tribe that I'd like to walk you through. I made sure that I was going to be bringing this to your attention, their perspective related to this matter. And lastly, at least from my point of view related to this item, to have a conversation as to when should have a community meeting related to this and who from the board should attend. I have my perspective on that. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. What I'm going to focus in on, and I'll answer any of your questions, but I'm going to focus on page 4 where it says FEMA assistance programs. And so what the county has been doing, county emergency management staff has been working with the state emergency management division on assessing damage across the county, not just county government, but all jurisdictions in the county and all homeowners in the county and renters. And so what we've done is, first of all, under individual assistance, you can see that we had a total of 25 residents that reported $721,554 in home and property damage. That assessment comes from the Red Cross. It comes from emergency management staff who actually walked the streets and looked at the homes that were impacted. Comes from the Washington Conservation Corps, who identified also an additional 116 residences that were impacted. So I want to talk a little bit about the individual assistance piece. It's not so much the cost, but it's the impact to a home. If you have a home that's $300,000 and a home that's $100,000, if those homes have major damage, then it's 2 homes that are counted by FEMA for an impact to the community. So it's not necessarily a dollar amount under individual assistance, it's the number of homes that are impacted. We're reporting this to the state. The state does a compilation across the state of all the counties and jurisdictions and where the homeowners are impacted. They in turn work with FEMA on that. And then at this point, I don't know if there's going to be a state FEMA damage assessment team for individual assistance. We're still getting those numbers compiled. I haven't heard word one way or the other. It may actually have been decided. I just haven't gotten the word back yet. And so I just want to let you know where we are with that. For public assistance, which is public infrastructure, the next category, the county has a total of $2,637,170 reported by jurisdictions across the county. I will tell you that the threshold, and we're going to talk thresholds, it's not declaration criteria, it's called thresholds, but the threshold for the county to even qualify if the state were declared is just under $1 million. So right now, the county is in the running for an initial damage assessment process. FEMA and state teams will be down this week to go through Thurston County and look at the various locations for damages and validate those numbers that have been submitted. Based on our conversations with the city of Olympia, you can see the most damage was the sewer outfall line. That was that sewer line that was taken out by a tree that fell during the weather event. Based on that, they're reporting just over $2.5 million to their, from their public works. We feel that's a fairly solid number. We worked with them. They provided estimates. So we feel that number is fairly good as far as that goes. So we feel fairly confident that the FEMA and state damage assessment team will validate that number. And we are about 2.6 times above what the county needs for a threshold. So we're feeling fairly confident on that. The big question on public infrastructure is where are the rest of the damages across the state? The state threshold is 10.2 million. So it depends on what the FEMA assessment team validates across the rest of the state. However, I believe based on what I'm hearing from my fellow emergency management directors across the state, that we're probably going to exceed that 10.2 million, and the governor more than likely will request a federal disaster declaration.
A time estimate for that, how long that will take?
The governor has 30 days from the end of the incident. The incident period ended on February 10th, so he has until 30 days to submit that request for disaster declaration.
All right.
And then the time estimate from FEMA is open-ended at that point. I've seen it go from 3 to 4 months up to as quickly as 30 days. So, FEMA then has a process they have to go through.
As we heard in Ocean Shores, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Anything, sir?
If we do meet the threshold to get the assistance, what might that assistance look like?
The assistants will come down and they will do projects. They'll do estimates on the cost to repair. FEMA provides up to 75% of the cost, and that can be emergency protective measures. It can be the permanent restoration work for the city of Olympia. As an example, the sheriff's office did a lot of overtime and expenditures under emergency protective measures, so did Public Works. That would be reimbursed up to 75% of eligible costs. The state traditionally has provided 12.5%. However, that is dependent on each disaster declaration. Going back to 1996, the state has always provided that 12.5%, but that doesn't mean they're legally required to do so.
How?
I would also add that eligible costs are very limited when it comes to staff time. So,
Correct.
for example, the sheriff would have to document the overtime, only overtime would be eligible. So it's possible that we could get reimbursed, but it's also possible that we might not.
Just overtime means no diverted on-duty deputies assigned to that area.
That's correct, because that's
Yeah.
normal time and the county would have been paying that cost anyway. FEMA only pays for those costs above and beyond what you currently budgeted.
An example would be sandbags. Public Works delivered sandbags. That cost is eligible to replenish those sandbags that were delivered. However, if we ordered sandbags in preparation but didn't use them, that cost would not be eligible because those sandbags could be used in future events.
Enough water testing, perhaps.
FEMA will not pay for waived fees. So as an example is the WARC, that donated resources and waiving the tipping fees at the WARC, FEMA will not reimburse for lost revenue.
The 700,000 that the citizens lost down there in the first part of your page 4, is that subject to be recovered by those individuals?
Only if there's an individual assistance federal declaration. And so I don't have a good feeling right now, one way or the other, whether that will be included for the state. I will tell you though, based on my 12 years as a state coordinating officer for disaster recovery, I had a number of 15 disasters where I was the state coordinating officer. It's very challenging to get an individual assistance declaration. An example would be the wildland fires in 2014 and 2015 in eastern Washington, where we had several hundred homes that were destroyed, burned to the ground without insurance. We did not get an individual assistance declaration for those.
Back in 2001, we were able to get an individual assistance program for earthquake damage, but it was limited to chimneys, and FEMA paid a flat grant amount per chimney.
It was very limited, yes.
Very limited, and we were able to show massive damage from the earthquake.
It depends on what's going along the rest of the state to be determine whether or not the state would qualify, because it goes state by state, so if you even make the determination based on, the state impact for individuals.
So the bottom line is we just don't know yet.
We don't know yet, but we still encourage people to report their damages. We have a fairly good, we feel, estimate of the damages both for public assistance and individual assistance.
So we're up about, what, 3.5 million or something?
2.6 million for public assistance. These are two separate categories. They won't take them together.
Combine them.
They won't combine them, no, sir. They're separate categories and they'll be separately considered when they look at a declaration process.
Move on, keep going.
Okay, I'll get into it later. When might we have the recovery debriefing with the community, if you would?
I think that's the discussion that the county manager is going to have you with the community meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Kurt. Are you sticking around for this one too?
I will stick
All
around
right.
for the next discussion, yes, sir.
Go ahead, Ramel.
Before I get to the bonus to win, we have a meeting with the community. I'd like to share with you an email that I received from David Trout. He's the representative from the Discovery Tribe. And there's a couple of items that I'd like to highlight on his email. Number one is the TPU facilities. This is verbatim what he's stating in this email. The TPU, Tacoma Public Utility Facility at Alder and La Grande are not designed to function as flood control projects and have very limited ability to do so. Number two, TPU did an outstanding job in managing within their constraints to maximize flood impacts while also balancing their license obligations. For example, the maximum discharge during the flood event was 15,000 cubic feet per second, which when added to the side flow in the time amounted to in excess 24,000 cubic feet per second the delta. He makes on the next paragraph, there's just excerpts of this. I'm not planning to read everything, just for you to read it. Just want to make sure that I bring this to your attention. The key point in that peak inflow into the Alder exceeded 27,000 cubic feet per second. That will be behind the dam, all the inflow, as he stated. While max discharge was only 15,000, what they discharged down out of the dam. TPU basically cut the flood in half and saved us from a spread, a repeated issue that we faced in 2005 and 1996. And then he was known as a lot of numbers. He also, as you see on the chain of emails, he followed up with additional information related to the inflow versus the outflow. And I made sure that I will bring this to your attention. No action items is for you at this point, it's just FYI.
Is that information correct? I remember 17,000 feet or something.
I think it might be,
Didn't we have information that they were doing
17?
17?
You have in here, in the last page of what Kurt provided, is what the Tacoma Power notification was, day by day, and also the outflow they provided, and again, day by day. And you're correct, on February 6th, they increased the flow from 12,000 cubic feet per second to 17,000 cubic feet per second. So this email may not be totally correct on the outflow out of the dam, but he's making a point of the inflow into the dam was quite.
Can I add some
higher.
clarification? So when the Tacoma, on February 6th, when Tacoma Power notified us, they said they were going to go up to 17,000 cubic feet per second. They actually only achieved 15,000 cubic feet per second on their discharge. So they were letting us know that they could go up to 17,000, but they actually only ended up going up to 15,000, because you see on February 7th, they went from 15,000 and dropped back down to 11,000 cubic feet per second at that point.
So David's email is correct.
I guess my question on this is, had they decided to allow more water out earlier, then they would have had more capacity, so they didn't have to let more water out later during the flooding time.
And that would be a question for Tacoma Power, but my understanding is they operated within the licensing limits that are established by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they were within the operating boundaries of their licensing, and they're a power generation license. They don't have a water control facility.
I realize that, but I feel that they have a responsibility to watch out for their neighbors on the river when they can. And just because they are allowed to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing. I really do think they've got a responsibility, and I'd like to see if there isn't any possibility of pursuing litigation. And I'd like to be more aware of what took place with that litigation in '96, so.
Yeah, so if I may, Commissioner, you raised that question to me yesterday.
Mhm.
And yes, we're gonna be working with the staff to see how that litigation happened in 1996, whether it was just dismissed when it was filed because it was not a flooding facility. We'll get that information to you. And at that point, I will schedule an executive session to speak with your attorney, whether you have the option to take additional legal actions.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, I'm sorry, I apologize.
I would just say that unless there's something substantially in error in this report from the Nisqually tribe, I'm not gonna be interested in pursuing litigation. So I think it might be a waste of time, but this is my perspective.
So I'm just bringing this information as come along. Responsive to Commissioner's request, I will follow up on that request and in that conversation, whether you like to engage the county and for the legal actions, I encourage you to have that in an executive session conversation.
All right, thank you. Apologize.
And lastly, my suggestion that perhaps we can have current staff to start organizing a community meeting, maybe 4 weeks from now. Is that time adequate?
Is 4 weeks an adequate time to get everything done that we need to get done, to gather all the information, and or is it too much of a delay? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
I don't know what additional information we have, other than what we have already provided to the citizens in terms of the response.
Well, then would it be better to have it sooner? Because I think the community would prefer something sooner than later.
Yeah, and that is probably the logistics that we need to discuss, and that's what, because Kurt's staff is gonna have to organize that community meeting. Yeah, so, and my suggestion at that point, this is just my suggestion, that perhaps the whole board may not go to the community meeting, maybe just the representative of the district, which in this case is you, and in representation of the board. So it doesn't create this business outside of the county seat type of situation.
Good.
We'll work with Robin to schedule that for Commissioner Edwards to make sure that. Okay.
You know what's cool? People heard you.
I know, I didn't have to come to the microphone.
Wastewater facility, biosolids?
The next two items will be pretty simple, attached to your packet is an email the Commissioner Edwards received from Ms. Michelle Harkins Brigman, which she has spoke with Dr. Richard Honor. And apparently the doctor has some good information that he would like to present to the board on a briefing related to wastewater facilities and biosolids. So Commissioner Edwards asked me to bring this to your attention. So if the board feels comfortable, I can just go ahead and work with Robin to schedule a briefing related to this matter.
I've attended several. This fella is pretty knowledgeable about biosolids and working with ecology and what those biosolids contain. I think it would be beneficial for the board to hear his presentation.
Yeah, he's not bringing stuff to show us.
I don't know, he probably has something on a slideshow or something, I suppose.
Yeah, and I will make sure that I invite public health staff as well as public works, so they make sure they listen to this.
I welcome that. You all right with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe when we need to hear, and maybe in the wake of that, we'll need to hear from someone from ecology or SWAT or something, I don't know, talk about why we do things the way we do them. We can contrast that information.
Sure, do a follow-up or something.
Yeah.
I know tonight the city's involved in it, and they're head over heels apparently with it.
Yeah.
From what I hear, but I don't know if
And the
that's
Old
true.
News as well.
Okay. I think that comes as a revenue source.
And the last item that I have for your agenda is this is just a follow-up to the dedication plaque under the Schutzholz Park. And, you know, we opened the park back in September 2017, and this is the language that we're gonna be placing on the plaque. Unless you have any particular comments.
I'm just looking at it. Number one, I like that it says dedicated to the residents and visitors of Thurston County. I like that. But when I see District 1, the O is capitalized, but District 2 and District 3, the T's are not capitalized.
Thank you.
That was my comment.
What is it? I got you.
Thomasina got it.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I like it. When's it gonna go up?
As soon as we get direction to prepare the plaque.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Questions or comments on that?
No, sir.
6 minutes after noon. I just have one item, but I'm gonna hold it. It's not burning. Anything burning? Anything?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear an update of where are we at on the e-inspections, I guess? What did you want to refer to them as? It doesn't seem like we're making the headway that I'd like to see.
That item is available to the citizens. We inform them about the availability for them to exercise that option. Some they're taking it and some they don't.
Okay.
So I don't know what additional information you would like me to provide.
Okay, I guess all I can say is that I've talked with 2 contractors that are longtime contractors here in Thurston County. And they were not aware of that option, and they were not made aware, and they had numerous interactions.
Could I have the name of the contractor so I can follow up with staff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Did we get a letter, you guys heard this probably at the study meeting, but did we get a letter from the City Council of Rainier
Oh, it's right ahead.
concerned about the trail naming of the Yelm Tenino Trail and how it omits Rainier, and they had some suggestions. Apparently, one of the city council members read a letter signed by the mayor that was supposed to be headed to the county commission for a formal request to consider a name change for the trail.
I have not seen that letter coming in, Commissioner,
Okay.
so I cannot
Try.
attest to that.
I saw it, I think I was handed the letter when I was there.
Try
Yelm
trail.
Rainier Tenino Tri Trail.
So official has not come to the office, we have not seen it.
Okay, she read it into the record verbatim,
Okay,
and it was very clear that it was gonna be a formal, so anyway, heads up, we'll
Yeah,
deal with it
that's
when it
great,
comes.
And there's a formal process for naming a trail. There's a formal process for that.
Well, I think the gist of it was that Rainier is a participant in that activity and they were left out of the mix.
Oh, I get the intent, yeah.
But the other piece of that is that it was also talked about that this trail is more than just that leg of the trail. And so is it more appropriate, like the Shoots Trail or, you know,
General.
is something more generic to, rather than a specific name to a geographical area?
Cause it's gonna probably connect up to
Yeah, it's gonna
other
connect to so
trails.
many other things,
it
so
connects to
we're,
the larger Chehalis Western Trail.
yeah, so that all has to be taken into consideration, I think, when we get that letter.
When we get the letter, yeah, we'll discuss it, find out what the ordinance says.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I was just curious if you'd gotten it.
That's what I
have not
had.
seen it.
And then there was
Alright.
that letter we got from Hopkins drainage ditch or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm having staff contact their attorneys to have a legal review as soon as that is done.
We'll have
Bring
it,
back to
okay.
your attention.
Thank you. I sent that to the mayor also. What's up?
Yeah, I don't
He said
know.
the same thing. Yes, to the attorneys. Good job. Are we done?
I'm done for my end.
Okay.
Anything, staff? Okay, Robin? All right, we are done. See, go ahead.
So since the new system, please wait until Megan shuts off before we.
I'm just gonna adjourn this meeting.